Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. We had a rare, very rare for us week off last week, but we're back this week, and things are pretty special.
Yes, they are very special. It's a special, special week. It is a little bit past our 10-year anniversary as a podcast, but I made a very important, I think monumental would be the right. I can't watch myself, Rob. It's very distracting.
You have been complaining for so long about not seeing the photos. You're actually going to see the photos live this time, and now you're complaining about it's too distracting.
Doesn't see me. Show somebody more important than me, Rob. Do it now.
Okay, I can do that because
there she is. I know it says Tom Andry underneath her name, but take my word for it. That is, in fact, the world international famous podcaster extraordinaire, Liz. Liz, thank you so much for coming back to the podcast. Thank you,
Hello.
Liz.
How are you, everybody?
We are excited to have you here. So let's get some of this.
Like, just keep it in your pants, you know?
Okay, well, we'll see what we can do. We are in video now. So
we are.
Video evidence one way or the other.
This is going to be the worst production ever. I'm handling all of the camera switching, and it's going to be a nightmare, folks. Tuck in. If you're listening to the audio-only version, nothing is going to make sense for the first while. That's how it's going to be this week. Welcome back. And welcome back, Liz. It's so awesome to see you again.
It really is. So, Liz, tell us about your room within a room. We're very excited to hear about your house with the room and the room within the room, because that was the plan. We were all on board with this. So
okay.
Tell us about the room.
So the room is not within a room. No. So seriously, we bought a house, and said house has an unfinished basement with about 7-foot ceilings. Mm-hmm. So in theory, we could put a room down there. The basement is, like I said, is unfinished. We've lived in the house 3 years, and I think the basement is going to stay unfinished for a period of time because I now have a 1.5-year-old.
Congratulations.
A little AV Rant baby. It's our first one.
No, wait, come on, Tom. You have kids. Your kids are definitely the first babies.
I've only had one since the podcast has been around, I think. Just the one. Yeah.
Okay.
But doesn't count.
So, yes. Little AV Rant baby. So our home theater setup at the moment, I think Will has actually sent it in for questions at some point. But yes, it's our living room. Big open archway into the dining room. Big window on the opposite wall. And then fireplace on one side and French doors into the living room on the other. I am going to have to kill a cat.
Okay. I approve of this. I approve of that.
Well, that gives us an opportunity because we have people who have joined this podcast as listeners after Liz departed the podcast. So they might not entirely know who she is. So we can introduce her while she's away, making
Liz,
sure a cat doesn't bother her anymore.
When we first started the podcast, there was I had a podcast partner, Dina, who was the wife of one of the guys who used to write for Audioholics named Jay. Really great girl. We did a woman. The girl's a little dismissive. She did the podcast with me for a number of years, like 4 years, I think, something like that. And then she got other commitments. She had kids graduating from high school, and she was going to do a lot more traveling, so she decided to stop the podcast. Then I put a call out there for additional podcast partners, and Rob was one of the people that stepped in here and there to fill in during that time. Back then, we knew him as Grammar Rob.
This is true.
Which is very true. Then Will heard that we were looking for somebody, and Liz said, if I remember correctly, Liz, and you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, Liz says, yeah, I could probably do that. And
it was more of a dare, actually. I think it was more of like, I think he said something to the effect of, you should do that. And I said, yeah, sure. They probably don't want me anyway.
But we did.
Sure, you could tell him. I'm interested because he doesn't want me to do this.
But I did. And how long did you
And,
do the podcast for? Do you know how many years you were on? It was like it had to be at least 2 or 3, right?
It was more than 3.
Yeah.
Because we were in London for 18 months, and I
Right.
did it when we came back.
Right.
So it was probably about 3.5, 4 years.
Yeah. So Liz was on for a long time. You know, a lot of followers. I still get questions quite regularly from listeners. You know, when's Liz coming back? You know, when are we going to hear more about Liz? What's Liz doing? So if you are new to the podcast since, you know, in the last couple of years, basically, then you may not have heard of Liz. So Liz, obviously you've had a child. You've moved from London back over here. I know you did that before you left the podcast. You got a house. You got the new baby. How's the baby? How's life here in the States?
Life here in the States is really good. I am, obviously, being a mom is a big deal. I'm still working. So I'm juggling a full-time job, an attempt at writing for pay, which isn't going anywhere yet. So don't ask to see things I've published, because I haven't published anything.
Okay.
And a foray into local politics. So I have a lot on my plate at the moment. But I actually have a question for you guys.
Yep.
So it's opportune. So in our home theater, that is not a home theater, it's just a living room with a great big television in it. We have set up Roku as our internet streaming provider of choice.
Right.
We use Netflix and Amazon Prime and so on and so forth. But we also have a paid account for Spotify, which is how we get music in the office, how we get music on our portable devices, and so on. Does anyone know why the Spotify app for Roku sucks so much? And does anyone know who I complained to about getting it fixed? Because it doesn't actually, I pay money for this service, and it doesn't sync with my playlists on my phone. It doesn't, I can't throw stuff playing on my phone to the television or, the sound system in there. The way we've gotten around it so far is by using Chromecast, because I can use a Chromecast device to cast from my phone onto the television. Do you have a better workaround? Or
I was going to suggest a Chromecast, so you beat me to it. Well, we knew Will would beat us to that. He would figure that one. Yeah, I guess you would have to complain to Spotify, because they're the ones who send the apps to the various services, so they just haven't updated the one that works on Roku, I guess.
In fact, they've made it worse.
Always fun.
I had the same problem with Vudu for a long time, because I was using Vudu on the Xbox One, and it's just the worst app. Like, you didn't do anything with it. And they just, like, in the last couple of months, updated, and now it's like 1,000,000% better. So there's
what
probably,
you're saying, if I should hold on and wait.
There's probably like one dude that is working on that app. Like, in that entire company, there is one dude.
There's probably less than one dude, because that one dude is probably handling the app for like every streaming box out there.
That's right. He's plugging away, Liz. He's got all the Mountain Dew and the tab.
Would it be funny if he listens to the podcast and he was like, "Oh my god,
they're talking about me,
guys! I'll get on it as quickly as I can."
No.
Well, that would be an awesome solution.
Right?
It's funny. Liz comes back to the podcast. She comes on immediately, and we say, "How you doing?" And she describes her home theater, and then she gets mad about an app. Like, it's like she never left.
Yep.
Like, this is exactly the way this is supposed to go.
Well, I'm glad to help, Tom. Do what I can.
You're killing it in the air.
So I have a question for you, Liz, which is that you haven't been regularly hosting a home theater related podcast, but obviously your husband's very much into tech and home theater and all that. You're interested in it as well, and you make use of it every day. I'm curious to know, from your perspective, how important all this 4K and HDR television, like, does that actually get into your life as something that's important, or is it only us people who make a point of talking about it every single week?
We should do a test. We should do a test. What is 4K, Liz? What is 4K?
Oh, come on.
Oh, I remember this. It's like the super duper high definition resolution stuff.
I'll take that as a correct answer.
That's practically the right name, so that's might as well be.
Might as well be.
I mean,
what is Dolby Atmos, Liz?
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's the wireless speaker things, isn't it?
Not quite wireless, but it's just more speakers on your ceiling.
Speakers on your ceiling. We're gonna give
has Will asked you about putting speakers on the ceiling?
No. This is all stuff that we used to talk about. I just don't. Like
now we talk about
a pop quiz here.
We're talking now. You talk about the consistency and color of
Nope, we're not talking about that.
Not anymore, huh? Gotten past that.
Not talking about that.
No, I wanted to ask though, because I mean we're so like almost insulated because we're talking to our group of people who are all, and it's like every week we're talking about Dolby Atmos and HDR and 4K resolution and stuff. But I'm like, how much, like, you're not a person who's not interested in it at all. I wouldn't expect someone who's not interested in it at all. But I'm like, how much does this actually get to other people who aren't necessarily every week? So
honestly, honestly, not very much. So let me we both actually have sort of stopped, or not stopped, but definitely slowed down our interest in AV related things, because among buying a house and having we also bought a 1973 Mini Cooper.
Ah, yes.
So we've been doing a lot of conversations, a lot of back and forth about restoring antique cars, or at least classic cars, to the point where it's infected my father as well. And my dad's just bought a Fiat and I think it's a Ford Maverick from the early 1970s as well. And my mom inherited a 1976 MGB, the kind with the rubber bumpers. So I can talk to you a lot about carburetors and how Will just lost the gas cap on the Pulaski Skyway a few weeks ago because he forgot to put it back on.
Congrats, Will.
Won't be living that one down for a while.
He talked about floor pans and clutch slave cylinder, master cylinder, the virtues of disc brakes and drum brake versus drum brakes. I mean, I got a lot on that.
So your interests have changed recently to the joint. That's all right. AV will still be here for you when you're done. So, but you do stream stuff quite a bit. You use the Roku, you use the Chromecast.
We still are cord cutters. We were cord cutters when I was back on the podcast, and we still live in the New York metro area, and we are able to get network television via an antenna, not even an antenna outside of the house. We have one of the, it's a flat one that sits on the wall. It actually sits behind our liquor cabinet, so you can't see it. Fantastic. Disguised by liquor. And we pretty much stream everything else. We have a Netflix subscription, a Spotify subscription. We had a Pandora subscription until recently. We've swapped to Spotify, Amazon Prime, and we had up until recently we also had HBO Go, but the budget has sort of been flexing as to whether it can include HBO or not. So.
Well, with the classic cars do tend to be a little bit of a money sink, so I can understand that for sure.
Yeah, and babies too.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And
those things. Don't get me started.
But one of the next projects that we are looking at, probably not going to be room within a room, but it is going to be something near whole house audio. So we have bookshelf speakers that were formerly in our living room, in our bedroom. We bought a set of new speakers that are pretty in red, and I really don't remember what they are. I'm sorry, guys. Failing you. In our home office.
Audio engine. I want
Probably.
that $. That's what
if
that
they're
is.
red.
Yeah, it's got to be audio engine.
I can show them to you. They're literally right here. Look. These ones.
Those look like Audio Engine A2 Pluses, all right. That would be my guess. Look at
They
that.
probably
2
say on
plus.
the back,
See?
don't they?
It does say 2 plus.
They do. I should have just looked. But our kitchen and our outdoor patio area are music-less, and this is a problem.
Well, that's a good point for me to mention. Yes, Apple's whole worldwide developer conference thing was taking place today that we're recording. We're recording this on Monday. We're not going to be talking about the news out of that because I didn't have any time to go through it and figure out what was what, but they announced something about an AirPlay 2 and Apple Pod wireless speaker whole house thing, and everyone was expecting them to announce some kind of partnership with Sonos, and instead they're like, nope, we got our own, because why not? We're Apple, and it's a speaker that costs $350, so there you go. I don't know. There's your option.
Remember when Apple used to innovate instead of just being me too? Do you remember those days? Remember when they came out with the iPhone? Everybody's like, that's the stupidest thing ever. It's never going to take off. And then it was like the biggest thing ever. And then they came out with the iPad and everybody, that's the stupidest thing ever. That's never going to take off. And it was the hugest thing ever. Remember that? Remember those days?
But I shouldn't give them too much of a hard time because I haven't looked at...
Remember when it came out with the Apple Watch and everybody was like, that's the stupidest thing ever. And then it never took off?
Oh, well, yeah. There's that. They still...
It's because the watch didn't have enough dongles. That was the problem.
That's right. It was dongle-less. It's their problem right there. Yeah, I'm very disappointed in how Apple's been ever since Steve Jobs kicked the bucket. But what are you going to do?
But we will go into, well, if there is any more relevant news, we'll go into that next week. Didn't have time to look through all the details, so yeah. Shouldn't give them too hard a time yet.
Yeah. So, I guess we could just get into the podcast proper. Liz has filled us in on what's going on with her. I mean, Liz, you want to stick around for a little bit of this podcast? Or, I mean, I know you got a baby you got to attend to, and they probably wake up pretty early for things.
Yeah, it's more of a job and life thing. I'm going to have to scoot, I think.
All right. Well, for all of us at AV Rant, Liz, thank you so much for showing up for the podcast and saying hi to us, because we really appreciate it. We'd love to have you back on whenever you feel like coming back.
Yeah.
We'll always be happy to have you here. And you want to kill an hour on a Monday evening, well into the night, just let us know. We'll be happy to have you.
Sure, an hour. Yeah, right, Tom. Only an hour.
Well, she said she texted me right before the podcast. She goes, "There's 20 pages of podcast notes. How long do you guys normally go?" I'm like, like 2 hours or something. I don't know. And she's like, I can almost hear her jaw drop on the other end. Just like 2 hours. I'm like, I know.
You see what happens when you...
Way more. It's got to be way more than 2 hours, because we used to go for 2 hours with 1 page of notes.
Well, this is we go fast now, and believe me, if it was up to Rob, we'd be doing 3 to 4 hours a week.
This is what has happened in your absence, Liz. I have run amok.
He has.
There's no one to reel me in.
No checks and balances, Liz. I need some checks and balances.
All right. Well, maybe we'll make it like a quarterly feature or something.
That'd be great. That would be great. All right, Liz. Thanks a lot for showing up. We'll see you next time.
Thank you so much, Liz.
Bye.
Bye.
So, that was exciting. How are we going to do this thing now that she's gone? Are we going to restart this call, or are we just going to keep going?
No, we can just keep going. The camera's on you. It's going to be low frame rate, bad lip sync. Sorry, folks. That's the way it's going to be this week.
Oh, you don't want me to record myself because of the thing. That's fine.
I'm already recording your face on my computer, and yeah, we'll see how it goes. But the audio only version will be fine. So there you go.
It was really good to see Liz, and yes. I know some of you don't know who she is, but just for continuity's sake, it was great to have her back on and to say hi to her and to catch up. That is literally, I talked to her on the phone while I was on vacation for 5.5 seconds, and she said, "It has been 10 years since I was on this podcast." I'm like, 10 years of the podcast. She goes, oh yeah, I guess. And I mean, that was it. It was great. So it was really good, at least from a very selfish point of view, to hear from Liz again.
Mm-hmm. And we have lots of listeners who have been with us either from the beginning or
Oh,
certainly while Liz was with us. So I'm certain they're all happy to hear from her again and get to see her on the video version. YouTube.com/C, the letter C, yeah, /AV Rant.
That's right.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
All right, we're going to go back and do the stuff we usually do at the beginning. We're going to thank our listeners of the week this week. It's actually listeners of 2 weeks because we didn't have a podcast because I go on vacation apparently. So does Rob. What's up with that? You could have asked the first week of summer, nobody's asking questions. So I want to thank Mark, Vincent, Nathan, and David. They went to www.avrant.com, clicked on the buy us a cup of coffee link, and left us a PayPal donation. Those go to our coffers to help pay for our hosting fees and other things. So thank you, Mark, Vincent, Nathan, and David.
Yeah, Mark, Vincent, Nathan, David, thank you all so much for those donations.
I also want to thank Mark again because he bought an SVS from SVS at PC 2000 during the Memorial Day outlet sale. And he told them it was because of us. And SVS responded and said, we love the podcast too. So
yay.
Getting love all around. So
congrats, Mark. That's an excellent subwoofer. I am certain you'll be happy with it.
I'm actually a little jealous. I really want a PC 2000. I have no need for a PC 2000, but I totally want one.
PC 12 NSDs to PC 2000s. I'm not sure how much of a difference you'd really
Zero
notice
difference
in your room size.
You know what I really want? I really want the wood tops.
Gotcha.
I don't like the grates on top because my kids put stuff on there sometimes and it worries me. Well, Nathan again ordered a U-Mic 1 from Herb over at Cross Spectrum Labs and let him know it was because of us. So Nathan, thank you very much for that.
Yeah, and congrats on that purchase too, Nathan. You'll definitely get excellent use out of that, and Herb does fantastic work.
That's right,
calibrating those microphones. So you will be pleased, I'm certain.
So, if you have some way of supporting the podcast, either financially or otherwise, just let us know, and we'll be happy to mention you as one of our listeners of the week. In the news,
we should throw out our contact info.
Yeah, get your question answered. All you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. That's good enough. All right, we're going on. We got we're already at we got a lot of questions, and I'd like to get through them all. So if you want more contact information, check out our videos, check out any other podcasts we've ever done, or listen to the end of this podcast, which you should do anyways, because sometimes something happens after the music. You never know. In the news, remember how we were hoping we could give enthusiastic recommendations for the Echo UMax 85? Or just about anything they're doing because it was really cheap and we were excited that maybe something really cheap was coming would be awesome. And they had that one good review and we had one listener who bought one and said it was pretty good. They just kind of laid everybody off.
Yeah, well, in America. In
America,
yeah.
And now they're only going to sell like some $165 box that's going to stream only Chinese TV, and you get a 2-year subscription with it, in which they could tell you it's an infinity year subscription because in less than 2 years that company's not going to be here anymore to support that thing.
Now, if you still want an 85-inch TV that is pretty darn good, and you don't mind the fact that it's probably not going to get the firmware updates that everyone was hoping for to fix some of the settings bugs that it has, they're selling it for $500 off right now, so it's only $5,000 for an 85-inch, because I guess they're getting rid of whatever stock they still have. So it's not like the worst deal ever, but just don't expect a lot of support moving forward from Echo, which is too bad, because I was hoping that would continue, but yeah.
That's too bad. So those TCL P-Series Roku TVs with Dolby Vision for low prices are looking very promising. Sure, they don't hit 1,000 nits, but other than that, they're looking better than we could have hoped for. And actually, the house because we Airbnb'd, that's what we did for our vacation, they had 2 of those TVs in their house.
Well, it's probably not these brand newest ones.
No, they're not. They weren't that big either, but they were the Roku ones,
right?
So they had a Roku remote and everything. I sort of hated them a little bit, mostly because they were very hard to control. The interface is just you had to basically go through the Roku to do everything, and then it was very odd. And then they had like buttons on the back to turn it on and off and control stuff, but the buttons made literally no sense. It was like a center button and then 4 cardinal direction buttons, so one north, south, east, west there, and then like middle button was power on and off, which was weird because it's usually enter or something. Up button may have been volume up and down, or may have been something like that. And then the side buttons, like one was input and the other one was something else, but it was very odd. I never really could figure it out, and the remote had fallen underneath the couch, and it took us 3 days to find it. So it was very, very confusing. But the TVs on most content that I saw, especially decent content, was fine.
Yeah,
fine. They clearly had it in dynamic, eye bleed mode, so that would have been fixed if I had been there. And like a lot of sharpness settings seemed to be on, especially with like what was coming over the TV, like the cable box and stuff looked really quite bad. But I think I could have fixed a lot of that just by getting settings, but I'm not going to mess with somebody else's TV.
Well, Mark Henninger over at AVS Forum and Chris Heinenen from Reference Home Theater, they've started reviewing them. This is the current, the P series. The 55-inch is the only one that's out right now, but $600 for a 55-inch, 72 zones of full array local dimming, Dolby Vision support, HDR10 support, and no, it doesn't hit 1,000 nits, but hey, for that price, I'm willing to kind of make that sacrifice, and the 65-inch is supposed to be $1,000. So, yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's still labeled as beta, but just in time for the June 6th release of Despicable Me 1 and 2, Oppo has made their UDP 203 and 205 Ultra HD Blu-ray players compatible with Dolby Vision. So if you've got one of those, you can firmware update it to Dolby Vision. Yay.
First and only Dolby Vision Ultra HD Blu-ray player at the moment.
Right. Late breaking news, I guess. I don't understand. It's all coming at the same time.
Well, just today.
Optima has announced their UHD 60 and UHD 65 4K HDR DLP projectors. They're $2,500 respectively, and that's like ridiculously cheap. It feels like for a 4K projector. These use X Instruments 2716 by 1528 resolution DLP chip that uses each individual mirror twice per frame to create genuine Ultra HD resolution. The UHD 60 claims 3000 lumens with 1 million to 1 dynamic contrast, while the UHD 65 claims deeper black levels, 2200 lumens with 1.2 million to 1 contrast. Whatever, dude. At some point, who really cares? Both support HDR10 and DCI P3 color, and both have vertical lens shift and 1.6 times zoom.
Yeah.
So
impressive prices.
Very impressive prices. I'm not a huge fan of Optima projectors. They're fine. But the ones I've used have been lower end budget ones, and I haven't. I mean, they've looked fine. They've looked okay. I don't think they will quite stack up to like the Epsons and some of the other ones, but they're good.
I do have a question about this DLP because so they're doing this half 4K resolution.
How's that not Wobble K though? That's
because the Wobble K that we're used to is 1/4 4K resolution, right? It's 1920 by 1080, so that's a quarter of 4K. And then when they're wobbling that panel, you end up with something that's visually slightly higher than half of 4K resolution. Well, this is starting with a chip that's half of 4K instead of a quarter of 4K, wobbling that so that you're using each of the pixels twice per frame, and that gets you full, genuine 4K resolution. And Projector Central already tested, not this particular Optima, but this chip out, and they're like, even when you do the single white line next to a single black line next to a single white line, it resolves that perfectly. So they're like, that's what it is. It's great. But the question that I have is, they're saying it's doing DCI P3 color. That would normally require 10 bits per color. And I'm like, if you're using this chip twice per frame, and even if you were only doing 24 frames a second, and usually with projectors, if it's 24 frames per second content, they show it at either 48 or 72, so you don't get flicker. But even if it is only 24 frames per second, if you just work out what 10-bit color would mean, which is 1024 steps per color, times 3 colors, times each pixel twice per frame, times 24 frames per second, that's almost 150,000 flicks of each mirror per second. And then if you go to 60 hertz, it's over 300,000 flicks of each individual mirror per second, which everything I've read about DLP says that each mirror can flick about 120,000 times per second. So I'm like, I don't know if it's possible to do 10-bit color with one DLP chip that's being used twice per frame, right? If you had 3 DLP chips, fine, no problem. You divide that number by 3, it'll work. But yeah, so I'm a little bit leery that this is actually 8-bit color. That's what I'm thinking is going on here, because that's the only way the math works out to me. If somebody knows that new DLP chips can actually flick over 300,000 times per second. I'm willing to believe that if somebody has some, but everything I've read says 120,000 times per second. So yeah, not quite sure how it's working.
All right. All right, we got some comments here. Earl. So Earl's a vinyl fan, and as you might imagine, he didn't really like what we said about vinyl the other day when Justin had a couple of questions about why his vinyl sounds like garbage. That's not exactly what he said, but
no, he says it doesn't sound as good as he remembers it sounding from a previous setup in a different house.
That's right. So Earl here's invested in a $4,000 turntable, $750 cartridge, and a $3,000 phono preamp. The output of that signal chain is amplified by this Dan 3801. But that occasionally had distortion, so we inserted a, not going to say it, a liar to tube preamp into this thing. But it's between the phono preamp and the dead end to attenuate the signal and eliminate that audible distortion that he was hearing. So it's basically like he's using the tubes as an EQ.
Yeah, it's another $450 device in the signal chain.
Yeah, so he's got like, how much has he got in this thing so far? About 10,000.
8.
Well,
a little over 8,000. Well, plus the Den N38. So yeah, $9,000 ish.
Yeah. So he says with a good vinyl pressing, he's found the sound quality to be better than the CD version or streaming version in numerous cases. His words, not ours.
That is, yeah.
The bone I think he has to pick with us is that we didn't encourage Justin to pursue improving his vinyl setup, but Earl wants to point out that the turntable, the stylus, and especially careful setup can result in real improvements of the sound quality. Also, we didn't address how the mastering can be different for the vinyl versus the digital versions, and that can make a huge and worthwhile difference. Rob mentioned near-field listening potentially being one reason why Justin wasn't enjoying his records as much as he remembered, but Earl says that the surface noise can be minimal, if not entirely silent, with the right equipment, careful setup, and high quality pressings of the records themselves. Man, the caveats of this thing are just killing me. So Earl is correct, okay, about some of this stuff. Absolutely, the mastering makes as much of a difference as
particularly the mastering. Yeah.
Interesting point here, Earl. I was listening to an interview with Ringo Starr over the weekend, I think it was, and he was talking about some of the recordings they had done back in the day. And, he's like, we had to always be this is something that he said, I'm paraphrasing here. We had to be careful because I couldn't hit the kick drum too hard because it would knock the needle out of the groove. Like when you were listening to the record, it would knock the needle out of the groove. Yeah,
that was another one of Earl's comments I neglected to put in the notes, but he was saying like, he can have strong bass. He's got vinyl pressings that have strong bass in them and that. So it's not like it's always the case that you can't have loud dynamics and strong bass, but that was another thing he wanted to mention.
But I mean, you can argue with Ringo Starr about that, I suppose, if you really want to. I'm telling you that I've heard this from multiple sources that, you have to be careful with the bass and other stuff in the recordings to make sure that the vinyl format can handle it. That might actually be a good thing. That may, in fact, cause the person who's doing the mastering to pay more attention to what they're doing and not be so lazy. In which case, you could end up with a better master. And the mastering, for me, I think, is a very valid point. Now, to tell somebody who just wants to listen to the records that they already own and has asked us how, whether or not he's done something wrong or are the records just sounding this bad, to tell him to go out and buy better gear, upwards of $9,000, like Earl has done, and to get better records, I don't really think that's the answer to the question. If Justin had asked, I want to hear good quality audio from a vinyl setup, these answers, these things that he's saying is probably things we would have said. I don't know that I would have said spend $4,000 on a turntable because I honestly don't believe that makes that big of a difference. But you certainly want to spend money on quality gear. It doesn't have to be that quality. I mean, the last time I was at a high-end store, the guy was like, "Hey man, I've got this turntable. It's like $300." He goes, "It's a great turntable. It'll do almost everything you need." You can spend a lot more and get something that's a lot better, but this will be just fine for 99% of what you're going to do. And then you can spend a little bit more to upgrade the whatever the stuff is on there.
Yeah, it'd be like an Audio-Technica LP 120, which is about $450, with an upgraded cartridge because the one that it comes with is, fine, but it's mediocre. So with an upgraded cartridge, you could spend upwards of about $300 for the cartridge. So for under $1,000, you can have a really nice turntable rig that has a phono preamp built into it already, so you can plug that into any AV receiver just to amplify it. That would be what I would recommend to someone starting out in vinyl. But yeah, to me, like the way Earl is approaching vinyl to me is similar to how someone who's like into classic cars, right? Who's into rebuilding a car. And it's like if someone came and said, I need a commuter car, should I invest in a $200,000 classic car that I need to work on every day? Or should I go buy a Honda Civic, right? I'm going to be like, just go buy a Honda Civic. Because if all you need is a commuter car, it's cheaper, it's easier, the upkeep is next to nothing, it's super easy to use, and it'll absolutely get you from point A to point B. That's streaming audio. If what you want to do is enjoy some audio in the background, I'm not going to tell you to invest hundreds or thousands of dollars in a vinyl setup. But if you are into it, the way Earl is clearly into vinyl, then yeah, it's a whole other world unto itself.
And I want Earl. I want it to be very clear to everybody who's listening to this podcast, especially Earl, if you're still listening. I do not think that there's anything wrong with vinyl. I don't think there's anything wrong with somebody loving vinyl or liking vinyl.
Oh, certainly, yeah.
You don't have to try to convince me that vinyl is a perfectly valid way to consume your audio. I'm okay with it. I think it has inherent flaws, and it's not for me. I'm not interested in it. I don't want to do it. I've experimented enough with it that I'm fine with my life being vinyl free. Now, if you can be okay, if I can be okay with you being into vinyl, then I think it's okay for you to be okay with me being not into vinyl. And we can just agree that audio has many different little niches, and that niche is not mine. So I'm not begrudging you, and I'm not trying to convince anybody to not get into vinyl. I'm just letting them know what the pitfalls are. Same thing, if somebody asked me about streaming, what would I tell them about the pitfalls? Audio quality isn't as good as CD. Audio quality, most of the time, maybe you're listening to Pandora. Don't come to me and say, how do I make my Pandora sound better? Don't listen to Pandora. That's the solution, because you can't. It doesn't really ever sound that much better. So, I point out the flaws when somebody asks and everything. And to say that, you can get around these flaws, which is what Earl has done, is all very true and all very valid. It just doesn't answer the question Justin had, which is, how do I make the current records I have with the current setup I own sound better? And the answer is you can't. Not really. I mean, we tried, but I doubt that's going to make any difference. Anything else on that one?
No, I think that's okay.
All right. Yeah. So you really want me to read this next one here? I really don't.
Okay. Basically, we got a YouTube troll comment who took the time to not just leave the comment on YouTube, because if that's where it was, I wouldn't care, but actually took the time to write to our actual email address and directed it at me, which Tom gets some hate. I get less hate, but this one was all on me, saying I was pathetic. And that I was proclaiming wrong information as though it came from God. I was like, whoa, okay, you're reading into that one. No, all I wanted to say in response to that is that I and a small group of people know exactly what I meant. So there you go.
So I guess if you guys want to go back and find it, it's not really that big a deal.
No, it's a old outdated video where I've updated the text to say, warning, this information is old and outdated. It's based on what we thought at the time, because that was the information we had. Anyway, silliness. YouTube, that's what happens from posting videos on YouTube. That's what we get.
All right, here we go. Getting into the questions for this week. I will say that I hadn't, whatever. David, this comes from Facebook. David. So first, he has an update. A little while back, David was looking for a not too expensive 70-inch 4K HDR display. We pointed him towards the 2016 Vizio M series, but he got to look at them side by side with the new 2017 E series. And while the E series lacks Dolby Vision, he couldn't see enough of a picture quality difference to justify the $600 difference in price. So he bought the E series, the Vizio E70/E3. I don't know what the E3 means. Anyways, and the money he saved can go towards his second subwoofer and a door, which is one of the things I think we recommended for him.
Yes, and we are very, very fine with that choice. Because if that saved money lets you get a door for one and then a good way towards a second sub, I think that's a very good choice. So, congrats.
So many times I've got people like, oh, I can't tell the difference, so what should I do? Buy whatever one you want. I don't care. You ask me which one's better. That one's better. That's the good one. This other one's fine. This one's good, better. It's just better, just by specs alone. You can't see the difference, then get the one that you do fine. So great. Congratulations. Vizio does not include a built-in TV tuner. So he asks, what is a good add-on TV tuner, and what would the tuner plug into the Vizio, or would it plug into the Vizio, or would it plug into his Marantz, or how does this thing work? So there are TV tuners out there. If you have an Xbox, is it just the Xbox One, or does it work with Xbox 360? It's just Xbox One, right?
They've killed that, haven't they? More or less. I mean, they're not doing the DVR.
Anymore? I haven't used it in forever, but
I don't know if it's still working, but the DVR certainly is never coming. They promised it would, but then it's dead.
No, it's not.
But yeah, Xbox One, it's from Hauppauge, an add-on TV tuner. If you have an Xbox One,
at least I did. I haven't used it in forever.
It's a single tuner thing. There is also Channel Master out there who makes standalone add-on tuners as well as a standalone add-on DVR. So those. Yeah,
and I'll be honest. I'm going to be really, really honest with you here, dude. I did all sorts of research into this before I got this Hauppauge thing, and I got this because it was like $20. I mean, it was like so cheap, and the Channel Master, especially the DVR, is going to run you like hundreds of dollars, and the guide kind of sucks.
Yeah, that's
and there's like, if you do the research, people are all like, yeah, it's great, except you have to do this and this, and every once in a while the remote has to be completely reprogrammed and this and that and that. I don't remember what all the problems were. There was enough things that I was like, I didn't want to deal with it. So if it were me, I would consider spending the extra money for a TiVo, and I believe that TiVo, with whatever tuner, with Romeo,
Romeo OTA standing for over the air.
That's pretty much what I would do, and it's more expensive, and there's a subscription or whatever, but I think that in the end you're going to be happier with it, and you're going to
it works really well. More. The guide data is really good. It also has all the streaming services integrated into it seamlessly. So all three of those, whether it's an Xbox, a Channel Master, or a TiVo, those are external boxes that act like any other external source. You would plug those into your Marantz AV receiver and then let your Marantz pass it along to the TV, because they're just external boxes. But there are a couple of other solutions that are worth looking into, and actually the one I would probably recommend to most people, if you have the rest of your home sort of set up to support it, is the HD Home Run from Silicon Dust, which is a network tuner. So that is actually a little device. So your TV antenna, your over-the-air antenna, plugs into this HD Home Run, and the HD Home Run connects to your Wi-Fi router. Either wired or wirelessly, but it connects to your Wi-Fi router. Now you get the HD Home Run app on any smart TV, any tablet, phone, computer, and now you can watch live TV. It's a dual tuner system. Watch live TV on anything that can run the app. Now, interestingly, one of the things that can run the app is a Chromecast, and the Vizio has Chromecast built in.
There you go.
So as long as you have some way of casting it to the Vizio, i.e. a smartphone or a tablet or something like that, you already have the Chromecast built into the Vizio, so you could use the network tuner. You can also turn it into a DVR as long as you connect some kind of storage to it. So whether that's connecting a USB hard drive, running the HD Home Run PVR or DVR software on your computer, or connecting it to a network attached storage. So as long as you add storage.
$135, dude.
Yeah, it's not too bad. It's not too bad. So that's the one I like, as long as you have a Wi-Fi, network that can support it. And then another one that's kind of similar is the Tableau. So Tableau TV is also a network tuner setup, but it has the storage already built in. You don't, it's like its own DVR. You have to add a USB hard drive, but it's already set up to be a DVR. But they, similar to TiVo, need a subscription for their guide data and that. So I like the HD Home Run the best, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got some devices in your house, just like the Xbox One, there is a chance that there is a device out there that you can connect to it that will stream. You will have to buy an antenna. If you're going to buy an antenna, you should get the Leaf ones, right?
Yes, yeah, Mohu
Leaf. There's the Ultimate one, I think
the Sky is the greatest one, but it's fairly expensive. But it has a range, a really long range. If the Sky antenna from Mohu can't pull in the channel, then basically nothing can. So that's kind of the big.
I've got the one down from that. I bought it at Sam's. Yeah. So, and it works pretty well. Yeah. It's just in the window of my house. I can just put it in the window behind my computer.
If you're running Plex, the HD Home Run tuners also work with Plex, and Plex can now use live TV. So there's all sorts of ways. It's more complicated setup, of course, but there's all sorts of ways to integrate that that HD home run network tuner into your system if you want to.
Right.
So it's pretty cool.
So he says it's going to have dual subwoofers. So while he can run a physical wire to one of them, it would be a lot more convenient for the second sub to be wireless. Can this connection method work, one wired to one wireless? And are the wireless subwoofer kits still unreliable and terrible? Now, I will say the subwoofer wireless kits have not been unreliable and terrible for quite some time. So that's a little bit. There are some unreliable.
There are still some out there that are unreliable and terrible. Yes,
but we have been recommending the one from Outlaw for a real long time, and that one's got great reviews. So that's the something.
OAW4 is the current version. I really like that one because it's $120. So that's why some people are like, oh, there's $60 ones out there. I'm like, yeah, but the $60 ones cut out and give you distortion. So it's kind of worth the extra money, and it's not such a high price that you're like sticker shock by it, at least in my opinion. So yeah, the Outlaw one I really like. Audio Engine also has a nice one, the W3, but it's a little bit more expensive at present. So that's all. You
should know. I mean, basically, if you have two outputs, like independent outputs on your receiver, which I think the 5011 has, right? Doesn't it have?
It's two outputs, but they're not independent. It's just it's a splitter. It's an internal splitter. So what you would want to do is set the phase on the wireless subwoofer to 0 degrees. Then do all the messing about with phase on the wired subwoofer. Once you have
them located in the same...
Well, even if you did, you'd still kind of need to. Because you're only going to get to set one distance and one channel level.
Right.
Coming out of the AV receiver. So since the wireless one is the one that's going to have some latency, that's the one you leave at 0 degrees. You trial and error adjust the phase of the wired subwoofer until you get nice uniform bass. Then you run Odyssey, and it will set the distance. And now the distance might come up as something much physically farther away than the subwoofer actually is, but that's because it's accounting for the latency of the wireless connection.
Yeah, it's just so we understand, because back up, because I know what Rob's talking about here, but so you've got one connection which is going very quickly, which is the wired connection. And the wireless connection has to be obviously sent wireless, which involves it being changed and then transmitted and then changed back and then sent to the subwoofer. So there is some latency there. There is some delay. The problem is that if you had two independent subwoofer outputs on your receiver would see that as that subwoofer being much farther away.
Yeah, like in the case of the Outlaw, it's about 10 milliseconds of latency in the wireless connection, which equates to about 10 feet of extra distance. So if your sub were physically 10 feet away from you, something like Odyssey might set it at 20 feet because it says, hey, there's this extra 10 feet of delay, 10 milliseconds of delay. So that's why the reading might come up like that.
And then what Rob is saying is by manually playing with the phase on the wired one, what you're doing is making the delay of that subwoofer try to match the other one. The problem is unless you have all the measurement equipment, it's very hard to know what the absolute best setting is. So you're going to have to do a little bit of trial and error.
It's trial and error, listening to bass sweeps on repeat in all of the seats that you care about, and what you're hoping to find is uniform bass from seat to seat. Once you've got that, let Odyssey do its thing, and you're good to go.
Lastly, asks, is the Xbox One S the best deal for an Ultra HD Blu-ray player? It can do a lot more than a standalone player, but it doesn't cost a lot more.
True.
But strictly as an Ultra HD Blu-ray player, is there any reason to avoid it? Well, if you look at the reviews, any review that came like early on will tell you that it's hot garbage because it doesn't put bitstream out audio, and you can't get Atmos or high-end or high definition audio or any of that stuff. It does that now.
That's right.
So the stuff I read basically indicated to me that the picture is fine.
For the most part, yeah.
For the most part. I think I would classify it based on what I've read as a decent player.
Yeah.
I would not classify as a top end player, and obviously it doesn't do Dolby Vision or any of that stuff yet.
No, it can do HDR10, so that's the same as most Ultra HD Blu-ray players, to be honest.
But we got the Oppo out now, which can do everything under the sun and is an excellent player.
But it's also more expensive, and it doesn't do any streaming at all, and it certainly doesn't play games. So
that's right.
There's a point here. Yeah, the Xbox One S, it has some bugs with some playback. In particular, if you're using a non-HDR display, it does a really bad job of converting the HDR to SDR. That's something that it does not do very well at all. So that's a problem, but that's not his case. He has an E-Series Vizio, which does HDR, so that's not really a problem. There's the whole converting on the disc. The color is compressed. It's using what they call 420 chroma subsampling, so it's essentially compressed the color information a bit. That gets expanded back out, and apparently it doesn't do as good a job of that as like the Panasonic, and like the Panasonic does it the best, and then the Oppo does it the second best, and the Sony does it really well too. And the Xbox One S apparently doesn't do that so great, but in real life, like you can barely see it. You have to put up test patterns that are specifically designed to show it. So overall, yeah, it's a decent player. Some people say the disk drive in the Xbox One S is a little bit noisier when it's playing Ultra HD Blu-rays, so it's not a completely silent player when it's playing, but it's like, it is a darn good value, and now that it does the bitstream audio, it's pretty feature complete. So yeah, it's like, do you need the absolute best, or would you be happier getting a box that does it all for a really good price? I'm like, yeah, it's really not a bad choice.
I would, if I were you, I would be fine with getting that.
Yeah,
I would.
But do be prepared for it does have some bugs. People have had to reset it or turn bitstream audio off and then back on again, or turn HDR off and then back on again. Like it messes up settings. It's a computer. It's a computer, so sometimes it messes up.
And don't come to us and say, oh, well, they're going to have Dolby Vision eventually because they promised that at this. Nothing that they say is true until it's real. Okay? Nothing that they say is true until it's real. That you just have to believe that, because that is what they do. They will not tell you that they'll say they have plans to do some stuff, and they very well do have those plans, but it doesn't matter until they actually do it.
But David's TV doesn't do Dolby Vision anyway, so wouldn't worry about that.
Okay, so I bought Logan on the Ultra HD 4K whatever disc, because my justification
comes with a Blu-ray.
My justification was I may someday get to review something like that, in which case I should have a disc around to do it with. But I felt dirty buying that disc. I gotta be honest with you, I felt a little dirty buying that disc. It's a really good movie though. All right,
yay.
John, this is again from Facebook. John has a Denon DBT 1713UD Universal Blu-ray disc player. Boy, is that an older one?
It is quite old. Yes.
That's the one. That's the everything. It plays.
It does DVD audio, SACDs, Blu-rays.
That was like really expensive
DVDs.
Back in the day, wasn't it? Wasn't it like?
It was up there, I think.
Like $2,000-$3,000, something like that. Anyways, he's been using its YouTube app, but it recently stopped working. At whom should he direct his furious anger? Denon? YouTube? Both? YouTube, basically.
Kinda, yeah.
It's basically YouTube.
Yeah. Denon actually over on their UK site for some reason, but they did put out an answer because other owners of the 1713 player have noticed this, and they said, unfortunately, basically YouTube has updated their codecs, and the player is old enough that they can't update it. It doesn't have the hardware necessary to decode the new codecs that YouTube is using, so they can't update it with firmware. There's nothing they can do about it. They apologize. They suggest using some of the other streaming players that are out there that are more modern and can handle the new YouTube apps. That's all Denon has to say on it. It's unfortunate because it was an expensive player, but much like having an older computer that just can't work with new software, that's what's happened.
All right. Nick here. Nick is like agonizing over the size and layout of his basement home theater. Dude, we have totally seen this room before, right?
We have indeed.
Okay, because I'm looking at this picture and I'm like,
it is familiar. Yes, you read.
He knows for certain that he wants a dedicated soundproofed room with 2 or 4 subwoofers, seating for his entire family of 4, plus some extra room for when they have guests, and a primary viewing distance of 1 screen width, since he likes a really big field of view. The basement has somewhat low ceilings and a support pole in an inconvenient location. Dude, I bet we answered this with Liz at one point. I feel like Liz was part of it. I
don't think it was quite for that far back, but
it feels.
I mean, he had a nearly finalized plan, which we'll be showing in a moment, but he's rethinking things.
All right. At present, he has his seats in front of that support pole, and the ceiling on that side of the pole is 7 feet 2 inches. And the ceiling on the other side of the support pole drops down to 6 feet 10 inches,
which is the minimum that's allowed.
Okay. So I guess we're probably seeing a picture here. I could probably like
of the way things are right now.
Okay. So his first idea is to construct one wall along what is presently the right-hand side of his theater and install doors to the stairway and remainder of his basement. This would create a room that is roughly 18.5 feet wide by 19.5 feet long. It would provide plenty of room for seating, but the support pole would be sort of in the middle of the room, and the ceiling would remain higher in the front and lower in the back, and the dimensions would be nearly square.
Yeah.
Okay, I see it. I see what he's doing here.
Yes.
I see it. All right, so that's the one idea. All right. So how much of a concern that the support pole really, when it comes to disrupting sound waves, is about 3.5 inches in diameter? Should you wrap it in 4-inch thick absorption material? 0. It's going to make very little. I mean, not 0, but it's not going to make a whole big bunch of difference.
Yeah, no, 3.5 inches in diameter, right? So anything below 4,000 hertz is wrapping right around it like it ain't even there.
Yeah.
4,000 hertz and up technically could reflect off of it. Maybe you don't want a completely hard surface. I'm like, you put a little bit of cotton batting around it just to dress it up, because I don't want a bare metal pole in the middle of my room either. I'd like to dress it up a little bit. So a little bit of cotton batting, a little bit of fabric around that, which makes it barely any thicker than what it is. Maybe it's 6 inches in diameter total now. That's all you need, because you aren't worried about anything below 4,000 hertz, which is well into treble. It's not mid-range, that's treble. So that pole is really not much of a concern. It's not a nothing, and certainly physically, because it demands where your seats have to go.
Yeah.
But,
it's certainly a concern for seating. For audio, I would not really even worry about this at all, to be honest.
No, I mean, I would just dress it up aesthetically.
I would do it because I might run into it at some point.
Sure.
I'd put something soft on it so that if I ran into it, it didn't hurt myself.
But I wouldn't put 4-inch thick absorption material all around it, because now it's become a big honking hole.
now it's
good
very
reason.
large.
Yeah.
Though, I mean, technically, it's kind of like a bass strap, I guess. But it's not really. All right. So what problems would be created by the nearly square dimensions, and how well would these problems be addressed by multiple subwoofers, acoustic treatments, and room EQ? Well, it's not. It's square, but it's not cube. So it's not optimal, but it's
really not that bad, though. It isn't actually square.
No, it's close to square. I mean, but it's like a foot difference, right? Is it 19.5 and 18.5? Yeah. I wouldn't. If you're going to put 2 subs in opposing corners, I think you'll be okay. If you're going to put 4 subs, I think you'll really be okay. But
you can't really do diagonally opposite corners, because there would be doors in both of the rear corners. But he could do middle of the front, middle of the back. He could do 4 subs in the ideal cross pattern: middle of the front, middle of the back, middle of the left, middle of the right. So that all of that is doable.
I honestly wouldn't
in this larger
worry
room
one bit about the dimensions of the room. So he asks, what about air circulation? Is this room large enough they won't have to tie into his HVAC system at all? Could he close all the doors and watch a 2-hour movie with his whole family without the air getting stuffy? Maybe just open the doors when the theater is not used to allow air to circulate. Do you want some air to circulate into this room?
Air needs to move.
That projector is going to get hot, and all those people breathing, it's going to become unbearable faster than you can possibly imagine.
And he is talking double drywall green glue
type
of wall, so that means the doors are going to be sealed.
Yeah,
they're going to be sealed type doors. You need to circulate the air.
Yes.
18.5 by 19.5 with a 7-foot ceiling, average. That is not big enough that you can be in there without any air movement. You gotta circulate the air. It can be passive. It can be an air exchange.
Right.
But there's got to be some way to get air in and out of that room.
His other idea that he had nearly settled on, but then had second thoughts, is to construct 2 walls to create a smaller theater. The support pole could then be embedded inside one of the new walls, and the ceiling would be one height within the theater this way. But he's very concerned that it doesn't leave adequate room for all the seating he wants, plus all of the AV equipment would still be in the closet. But now that closet would be outside the theater and inaccessible unless he opens the theater door and walks to the closet. Okay, I'm going to address the last part of that question first. The number of times you're going to want to go to that closet is while something's happening in the theater that you getting up and leaving is going to distract from, not like changing a disc, which is doesn't make any difference where it is. Negligible. To me, I don't see that being much of an issue. This is a perfectly serviceable home theater here. It's smaller.
Yes.
Which is not a huge problem. I am kind of the opinion that you should just go with the bigger one. It'll certainly give you a lot more room for your guests. It'll also make it easier to place your speakers and get all the speakers that you want in there. This is perfectly fine as well.
So I had a different thought, which is that, so first of all, very often when people are planning their theater, they are considering the maximum number of people that they're ever going to have in there, and they make their plans based on that. And in my opinion, that's folly.
Yeah,
because the number of times that actually happens in real life is far fewer than what you're thinking of in your mind when you're first planning it. Plan the theater for what you are genuinely going to use on a day-to-day basis. If you need to accommodate more people, even the smaller theater definitely can. You could have one row of 2 seats in front and 3 seats in back, and that back row could be very close to the back wall because you're not going to be sitting in it, and believe me, no one cares as much as you do. This could be very serviceable in a smaller room, but I do like the idea of a slightly larger room, and I think there's actually a way to play this in between, because one of the reasons I don't particularly like the larger room setup as it's drawn this way is that anyone who wants to get to the bedroom or the rest of the basement comes down the stairwell, opens a door into your theater, walks through your theater to the other door to get to the rest of the basement. If this is a soundproof room where you're trying to keep the sound in and the sound out, every time someone else wants to get to the rest of the basement, they're opening doors and disturbing the theater. I'm like, no, what I would do if you want a larger room, than the small one that you have in the plans, is move what is currently in the plans for the smaller room, what is the left wall, move that down so that the smaller room would be wider. Right? Now, yes, that would expose the support beam. The support beam would be to your left. But you move that down, now you could have access to the equipment closet if you want to. You would have a wider room, and you'd still have a hallway from the stairwell to the rest of the basement. You could have one entrance to your theater. You could do an air exchange between the theater and the bedroom next door. And you don't have to have someone traipsing through your theater every time they want to get to the rest of the basement. So I'm kind of splitting the difference.
All right, because you've cropped these pictures, I'm having a hard time.
Well,
seeing
that's
this.
what he sent. I didn't crop them
Yeah.
anyway, but yeah.
Oh, okay. Because the stairway to the ground floor is really weird. So I'm trying to figure out where so you enter.
Bottom left is the bottom of the stairs. They go up to the right in the image.
Really? That's dumb. I'm not saying that he's dumb. I'm saying that. So you absolutely have to go through the whole home theater. Yeah.
In that plan, yeah. And like, instead, just have it be a hallway. There's a door. Yeah. There's a wall that you construct that becomes the left wall of your theater. Now you have a wider theater. That means you can accommodate more seats if you want to, which I think in his case makes a lot of sense. Plus, he wanted that access to the closet. Now the closet is inside your theater instead of outside your theater. It all kind of works.
I have a five people in my family. Okay, and then we have a group of friends, and their family is 4, and they're over at least once a week, or we're over their house at least once a week. It's very rare that we went on vacation with them. So the whole time we were on vacation, we were with them. The number of times I've had more than 3 people in my home theater,
right,
is fairly negligible. Like my 13-year-old son does not want to watch anything after we express an interest in watching it. So, it's if we say we want to watch it, he don't want to watch it. Oh, I don't like that movie. I'm like, you've never seen it. Shut up. Just come sit, watch it. I don't want to. Leaves. Okay. So now we're down to 4. Very rarely do I have. And then when I have friends over, very rarely do I have people who are like all 9 of us are trying to fit in here. You need one main row of seats that accommodates the main people in your family. Mm-hmm. And then literally every other seat can be put wherever. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
No one cares. Can they see the screen? That's all they care about. If they can see it and they can hear the voices coming out of it, they'll be happy, because they're not going to care anything about Atmos or any of this.
If you look at the smaller room plan, if you went with my idea of expanding it to the left, now you could have your 4 seats in the primary row. You'd have a decent amount of space to the right. You'd have 3 feet to the left on the other side of the pole. So the left side of the seats can be up against the pole. That's fine. And then you'd still have a 3-foot walkway with the closet in the rear left corner. To me, that plan works out. Regardless of what room setup you go for, though, you need air to circulate. Whether that's tying into existing HVAC, doing a dead vent that goes into the bedroom, or just a passive air exchange might also be fine.
All right, so he asked, is this smaller room better plan than the larger room? I don't. First of all, I mean, you could do whatever you want. I think Rob's plan sounds pretty good. I don't like the idea. I mean, your other room is fine. It's just people will be walking through the home theater every time they come down the stairs. Now, if you say that's never going to happen because nobody's ever going to come down the stairs unless they're going to the theater or going to bed, and those two things will never happen at the same time, you may very well be true. But you're going to have to sell this place someday, and people are going to think it's weird that you got to walk through one room to get to a bunch of other rooms. So I would recommend at least having a hallway there. So one other proposal by Rob is basically to build the smaller room but expand its width. Okay, is that what we just talked about?
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. But he has some other questions about that.
So. All right. He's very concerned about the disruption to the mid-range and treble sound waves, so he wants to know exactly what you need to eliminate it as an acoustical problem. This also means
really not a problem with that pole.
No, that pole is not a problem. This would also mean that the ceiling is uneven from left to right now instead of front to back. Could this disrupt his ceiling Atmos speakers? Would it make multiple subwoofers less affected due to asymmetry? No and no. How about that?
Yeah, so it's 4-inch difference in height.
Dude, seriously.
It's really not going to affect the bass. Definitely not going to affect the bass.
No.
For the in-ceiling Atmos speakers, I mean, is there any... If it's butted right up against that 4-inch lip...
Oh, okay, fine. If it's right on the 4-inch lip, but the difference in they're supposed to be diffuse.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be really all that localizable. That's the whole idea. Having a little bit difference in height is not going to make any difference. You leaning from one side, leaning on the arm of your chair is going to make more of a difference than having that speaker be 4 inches higher. You know, you lying down on the couch instead of sitting up, or you reclining on the couch is going to make more of a difference. So unless you're going to put your head in the
what
vice,
I completely understand, he's like, if I'm going to do this, I want to do it really right, and I want it absolutely optimized as much as humanly possible.
Yes.
But you can, this is one of those cases where perfection is the enemy of greatness.
Yeah.
Right? So you can have a great home theater that you're going to worry to death because you're trying to get a perfect home theater, and there's really no such thing.
No such thing.
So don't completely overthink this to the point that you're psyching yourself out.
Yeah,
That's
and I would
support
also
pole and that 4-inch lip are not big enough to worry about.
I know that you're gonna go 4 subs, but
yeah.
I would start with 2. Yeah. I think you're probably gonna be fine. I don't think you're gonna need 4 subs. I mean, even with the squarish room that you were talking about, I still don't think you're gonna need 4 subs. Would 4 subs technically perform better than 2 subs? Probably, but audibly, I don't know the difference is going to be that big of a deal to you.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's like, how often are you, Nick, going to be actually sitting in every single seat in your theater? Because the 4 subs will get you even more uniform bass in every single seat, but nobody cares anywhere as much as you, and you're probably going to have your favorite seat that you sit in the vast majority of the time, and 2 subs can make that seat sound fantastic.
Yeah, that seat and everywhere else you might decide you want to sit. And like I said, you're going to be in there sometimes, you're going to recline, you're going to lie down, you're going to do something, maybe sit in a different seat for one reason or another. And you will know that the bass is even or because of that. No one else is going to care. So, I mean, if you're really concerned about this 4-inch difference, you could build a false, drop ceiling, basically a false ceiling that's 4 inches down level with everything else, and then you can mount the speakers to that, and then just fill that entire thing up with insulation up there, and you got one big, ginormous 4-inch thick bass trap. You could do that. I mean, it wouldn't be a terrible idea. I don't know that's necessary. Audibly, as far as the speakers are concerned, I certainly don't think it's necessary, but it'd be nice to have a humongous bass trap, but now your ceiling
then
is
the whole ceiling is 6'10". Yeah, that's pretty low.
Yeah, the whole ceiling becomes very, very short. So I don't know. I'd say put the speakers up there and not worry about it. Vince. About a year ago, Vince bought a pair of SVS PB2000s subwoofers, thinking that they would be enough for his space, but it turns out he miscalculated his cubic footage. He actually has about 5,000 cubic feet, and the subs aren't quite up to the task.
Okay.
PB2000s. Really? 5,000, I guess?
Yeah, 5,000 cubic. That's a little... I mean, 3,500 is right in their butter zone. Yeah. You could maybe stretch them to 4,000. 5,000 is definitely pushing it for 2,000s.
So his two options are buy bigger subs or seal off the room to reduce the air volume. Sealing off the room would mean adding a door to one section, building a wall across another 10-foot opening. If he does this, the new volume would be about 2,000 cubic feet. He wonders how substantial would the wall need to be to keep the bass in? And would pocket doors be acceptable in the wall so they can still have an open space when the subs aren't in use? The thing about pocket doors, because I consider this for my home theater as well, they'd have to be substantial because they're going to vibrate inside the little.
Right. Yeah. The actual it's more the sliding mechanism that needs to be substantial than the physical door itself.
Right?
Because you just want to avoid rattle. That's what we're.
Yeah. But if you could get nice doors, and they exist, I've seen them. That close off and sort of seal up. I mean, it doesn't have to be airtight. I mean, my door's not airtight. It just has to be a physical barrier to keep the sound in the room. And the normal pocket doors will work fine. It's just that they're going to rattle like crazy and drive you nuts, and you're going to hate them. So you need to make sure that you get some doors. Would that work? Absolutely. But the doors don't have to be. So I mean, I just have a regular old door on mine. I mean, I don't have any sort of door.
Yeah, there's kind of two sides to this because we don't actually know if Vince wants really good soundproofing, which I don't actually think he does based on the original scenario. The original scenario, things were opening.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think what he's really concerned about is bass pressurization inside the theater. And if somebody outside the theater can still hear some sound, I think that's okay. It's going to be very muffled, but it's not going to be dead silent on the other side of that door, right? So if that's the question, if what you're saying is, what do I need in terms of a wall and a door so that I can have pressurization inside my theater? The answer is you can have a completely normal 2x4 wall with 1 inch thick drywall on either side and a completely normal interior door, and that will allow you to pressurize inside the theater.
Yes.
Because sound is just pressure. It's waves. Waves do not like to transition from one medium to another. So when they meet another medium, even if it's a flimsy different medium, even if it's water to air, right? Most of the sound wave energy reflects back to where it came from. It just doesn't like to transition into that other medium. Some of the sound wave energy does transition into that other medium. Now the question is, okay, so that small portion that did transition into the wall or into the door, do you care if you can hear it on the other side? Because if you don't care, okay, a small amount gets into the wall, gets into the door, and gets out on the other side, and you can hear it. Or you build a really, really thick or a really, really well-damped wall, and it converts that small amount of energy that got into the wall and into the door, it converts that into heat so that you don't hear it on the other side. Right. So that's the soundproofing. But either way, the same amount of pressurization stays inside the room. So if all you care about is pressurizing inside the room, you can have a completely normal wall and normal doors.
Yes, it doesn't have to be. I mean, if you're going for soundproofing, it's expensive, but it doesn't have to be an expensive wall or door in order for it to stay in. Do think about the rolling mechanism and how well that's going to work, because that could be expensive. But honestly, it's probably cheaper just to buy bigger subs. I hate to say it, it's really true. It's probably because that the wall and all this stuff. I did it myself with my friend's help and to build a wall in here, and that was a non. I mean, it was a couple $1,000, $2,000-$3,000, and that was no labor cost. That was no design cost. That was just me and a couple of friends and my dad on a weekend knocking that out. So.
Because 5,000 cubic feet isn't so huge that you couldn't just get a pair of bigger subs and handle that.
It's probably cheaper. It's probably cheaper.
That's true.
Right. Think about it. Dan is building a new house that will have built-in home theater and whole house audio system. His builder's AV installer is recommending proficient audio in-wall and in-ceiling speakers. Dan has no experience with this brand, has been able to find much in the way of reviews. The installer has offered to let him listen to one of the installations he has done for another customer. But what do we think? Do we have any experience with this brand of speakers? We don't.
I don't. No.
But they are one of the many brands owned by Core Brands, and it's those are Blue Bolt, Elon, Furman, Miles, Panamax, Proficient, Speakercraft, Sunfire, and Xantech.
Right.
So this is all part of that.
Oh, they're part of the Speakercraft family. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's part of the Speakercraft family. So what does that mean? That means that your installer is getting fantastic profit margins on these things. That's what it means. That's what it means. And I'm not saying that to say that they're a bad person. They deserve to make the money. All right. But Speakercraft in particular, and these companies that are installer related or installer focused, their selling point is sell our speakers because we have a 50-point margin.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been listening to the Cedia podcast, and they've had a whole series, and they've been talking recently about how they actually, a lot of installers are still stuck in the business model of you purchase the equipment from us and we install it, quote unquote, for free, but that means that the equipment has to have a really high margin.
Right.
And they're still stuck in that. And they're like, look, when you hire a plumber, the parts are nothing. You're paying all for the labor. When you go to a car mechanic, the parts, I mean, they're not nothing, but they're not nearly as expensive as the labor, right? So people are used to paying for labor. They're like, hey, we as Cedia installers ought to be charging for labor separate from parts. But because they unfortunately got stuck in a business model where it's you buy the parts and we install it for free or installation included, that's sort of what's happened. So in that sense, the products aren't as bad a deal as they, like, if you bought them as an individual and installed it yourself, they're a horrible deal.
Yes.
Right? Like if you bought it at full retail price and then installed it yourself. But it's because you're probably getting the installation and the product all for that one price. And if you separated out what's labor, what's parts, it wouldn't look so bad. So want to be fair to the installers and fair to these companies, because it's an outdated business model that even the Cedia people themselves are like, we got to change this because it doesn't make sense anymore. Like people want to install an Apple TV. What are we going to do? Charge them $600 for an Apple TV? That doesn't make any sense. We have to be able to partition out parts versus labor, but that's their side of things.
So I would highly recommend you go listen to the speakers.
Yeah.
I don't know that if they're recommending in-ceiling speakers for your home theater and they're not just the Atmos ones, I would recommend.
Yeah, he did say in-wall and in-ceiling. So that's
I'm
okay.
hoping that there's in-wall options here for your home theater. So make sure that's happening. But go listen, see how they sound.
Yeah.
If you like them and they're comfortable installing them, go with them. The problem you're going to run into is dealers have relationships with certain brands, and those are the brands they carry. It's like you can't go to a Best Buy store and say, sell me a car or sell me a motorcycle. They don't carry them. They don't have them. Same deal here. They have access to certain companies, and that is that. Which means if you decide you want to build your own home theater or go with products that they don't sell, you're kind of putting them between a rock and a hard place. You can't say, hey, I'll buy the speakers, give them to you, install them.
Right.
They generally don't work that way, and they you'll have to really communicate with them if you do want to go with a different speaker brand.
Yeah.
But I would take a listen not only to this, but find out what other options they have and see what they think.
Yeah, because they might carry Kef or Martin Logan, maybe RBH if they happen to.
If they don't carry RBH, you should encourage them to do so and then go with RBH, because that would be the easy answer to this problem. We don't have any real insight into these. They probably sound fine. That would be my guess. Robert would like some clarification on our comments regarding amps plugged into surge protectors with voltage regulation. He's never had any noticeable issues with his Outlaw 5000 amp plugged into his APC H15. Doesn't want to risk future damage. Should he worry? Are there best practices for the APC he can use to minimize the risk of damage? Should he just plug the Outlaw into the wall? This is one of those if it's not broke, don't fix it solutions here. I mean, the easy answer is just plug it into the wall. That's probably what Outlaw told you to do in the first place.
Yeah,
but
I would say read the manual. If they have a recommendation, go with the recommendation, because many times they say, we recommend plugging it directly into the wall.
And almost all of them do. They really, really do. But that's the easy thing, and it's easier than doing anything else. It's just find the plug, unplug it from the APC, plug it into the wall. Bob's your uncle.
Yeah, the clarification of what's happening is this is actually a bit of speculation on our part, because we're not 100% sure on why this happens the way it does, particularly with some subwoofer amplifiers. But it seems to be when the subwoofer or the amplifier is asking for a massive transient peak right now, right? It's asking for a huge amount of power. that actually is enough to cause a small voltage sag, right? It's similar to like turning on some big device, you turn on your dryer, right?
Right.
And your lights dim a little bit, right? Similar idea. A huge amount of power is requested, very suddenly. It's enough to cause a small voltage sag. The voltage regulator sees that and kicks in and says, all right, I'm going to pump up the voltage. But it was only a transient peak. And now all of that voltage is present when it doesn't really need to be. And you end up with kind of a voltage spike. And it gets into this weird feedback loop because then the amplifier tries to like clamp down because like, hey, I'm getting a voltage spike. So then tries to clamp down. Then it's like, now I don't have enough power, and it requests more power. And the voltage regulator goes, okay, I'll give you more power. And it just kind of keeps going up and up and up like this. And before you know it, something blows.
And remember, we're not electricians or electrical engineers.
But that seems to be what's going on.
That seems to be the problem here. But if you haven't had a problem with it, and you're lazy, like I am, and I say that with all respect and love because I am a very inert person as much as I can be. You might not do anything. And I would be okay with that. But
I've left my AV receiver plugged into my J15, which is a similar thing, has voltage regulation on all the outputs, because your speaker amplifier is rarely trying to request anywhere close to the number of watts that your subwoofer amplifier is.
Right.
That's why I think
my receiver's plugged
anecdotally,
as well. So, I mean, unless you have extremely high power hungry speakers, I don't think I would worry about it one way or the other.
Yeah, it's funny if you put like actually your H15 could show you how many watts you're drawing, and it's probably like your AV receiver probably says 160 watts per channel, and if you multiplied that by 7, you're like, but why is it only drawing 80? And it's like, that's probably the most you're ever drawing.
So I probably wouldn't worry about it, but the correct answer is plug it into the wall
or do what it says in the manual.
Because that's the answer that's not going to get us sued if your thing blows up. So, Devin, this is not Denon, Devin. Devin is using Sennheiser RS120 wireless headphones. He has 2 pairs for when he wants to watch movies or TV without anyone else hearing what he's playing. He likes the convenience of wireless, and he prefers to remain wireless if at all possible. But he finds the RS120s lack bass and compress the sound dynamically, so he wants something better, and he's willing to go wired if that's the only way. He sits about 10 feet away from his Denon X4300H receiver, and he wants the ability to use 2 pairs of headphones at the same time with a budget of $200 for both pairs.
That's what he said. He said $200 for 2 headphones. That's where the words he used in his email. So that sounds like total budget, and he wants 2 pairs of headphones.
He wants 2 pairs of headphones. So that's where you run into problems. I think you can get 2 of them for $400 a lot easier than you get 2.
Oh, yes.
Sennheiser doesn't just make the 120s. They make other ones, and they're all...
They do, but, I mean, like, for example, if you go to Inner Fidelity, the one that they're going to recommend... Now, they're recommending the RS170. That's actually been replaced now by the RS175 in Sennheiser's lineup. But it's $380 for 2 sets of the headphones plus the wireless transmitter, which can power... I think it can power 4 of those headphones, but certainly it can do 2.
I think my brother uses those. They are quite comfortable. I mean,
they're
like
comfortable. They're sealed, so you get the better bass. They're a higher-end headphone anyway, but... $380, we've blown your budget. If it was $200 per pair, then we're within your budget.
Yeah.
But if it's the way that I interpreted what was written as $200 total for 2 pairs, then unfortunately that's blown the budget. But I'll still mention it because it's out there.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning. I'm hoping he really means $200 per, because $100 for a wireless headset alone is hard to find, much less 2 that are coming off the same transmitter. I mean, you can find like Bluetooth and stuff like that, but then you're into, a Bluetooth transmitter.
But then you need a Bluetooth transmitter. Yeah. Like I couldn't come up with a solution that was wireless, can do 2 pairs of headphones and all of that for under $200. Like I just couldn't make it happen.
Yeah.
With anything I would recommend, right? Because the other way you could make this wireless is to use that Outlaw wireless transmitter.
Which is like $120 by itself. Though.
But it's $120. And then you'd need to connect it to, like, a great choice would be the Samson. I thought it was Samsung when Tom talked about it, but it's Samson, Samson. But that 4-channel studio headphone amplifier, which is $60. So you've already spent $180 just to get wireless and the amplifiers. that means $10 headphones. I mean, that I was gonna recommend the Sonys, right? The Sony MDR 7506s. You can find those for about $80 each. So you can get 2 pairs of the headphones for under $200. You can get the wireless setup for under $200, but together you're closing in on $400 again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So go with the Sennheisers. Yeah. Basically
Yes,
what
but
it comes down to.
it's way over the budget he wanted to pay.
Well, or yeah, because that's not a reason. Unfortunately, it's not a reasonable budget in the current climate. Now, somebody who's watching this video in 2019 and would like to call us idiots for not knowing what we're talking about, it's 2017. So
right.
Shut up. Shut up, troll.
I mean, is there a way he could do it all wired? I suppose, because you can feed one source into that Samsung, right? The 4-channel thing.
Do all that. You just plug in a Y splitter into the thing and buy 2 long headphones.
Yeah, but sometimes that doesn't get loud enough. Because the headphone jack output isn't always very powerful, even on, high-end AV receivers tend to skimp out on the headphone jack.
All right, so the output to the...
So output the headphone, or you could use the Zone 2 output. That would also
Zone 2
work.
would be probably better, yeah.
Output that to the Samsung. The Samsung's only $60. You get 2 pairs of the Sony headphones. The 7506s, those are about $80 a piece. So you're a little over $200 for an all-wired solution.
Your
you got wires traipsing all the way across.
But you have individual volume control, and you can plug into up to 4 headphones.
Yeah. I mean, we went $20 over your budget with that solution. That's not too bad.
And then you can save up for the Outlaw. Right?
Oh, yeah, for the wireless transmitter. Right.
Yeah, you can save up for that Outlaw.
Okay.
There you go.
So, that's a path forward, Devin.
We'll go with that.
Hopefully that would work.
Oh, something stuck in my teeth. It's driving me nuts. Dave.
Yes.
Look at this picture, dude. I want to live here.
I know.
I should have rented this guy's house. Dave has an amazing house made of wood, it looks like, and an indoor pool. And I'm scrolling. Look at all these pictures. Holy moly. All right, Dave has an indoor pool. He spends about 20 hours per week in this room. Must be nice to be Dave. And finds himself doing a lot of his TV watching in there. So he installed an Elite Screen's 100-inch screen along with his ViewSonic 7820 HD projector, and he's using an older Yamaha AV receiver to power 5 Polk speakers. These are for moisture-resistant in-walls and an outdoor center. Being a pool, the room gets very humid and can also get over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. You really can't run wires or power cords outside of the equipment room behind the screen. And this isn't a critical listening area at all, so he thought 5.0 would be fine, but now he wants subwoofers.
Yes.
He plans to install 2 in-wall subwoofers and power them with the Dayton Audio SA230 amps, unless we say those amps are totally inadequate. What he's finding difficult is identifying any in-wall subs that are moisture resistant and could withstand the occasional splash. Well, they exist. Okay,
yes.
They definitely exist. There's a couple places you can look and things that you should do. There are outdoor subwoofers. Many of them are meant to be buried in the ground. They have a little chimney that comes out of the ground.
Oh, there's that type, sure.
Port. That's not what you're looking for. It sounds like you want something in wall. So my guess, without knowing what Rob has found, because I didn't get this far down these questions, is that there's going to be something that is like for boats or yachts or
that's right.
Outdoor, that sort of thing. That's what I would look for.
Yeah, the word you're looking for when you're searching for it is marine subwoofers.
Yeah.
That's just what they call them, is marine subwoofers. They are largely meant to go in boats. But JL Audio, a company that we certainly trust, makes marine subwoofer drivers. They're not exorbitant. You're looking about $200 per driver, but that's not so expensive that I'm like, oh my goodness. And you've already got the amplifiers to power them. And they say right there they can work either in a sealed enclosure, which they sell pre-made sealed enclosures if you want them, or you could build your own, or they're like, you know what, it's honestly fine to just have the back open because he's got this other room on the other side of his screen there. So I would point you to a JL Audio marine subwoofer driver.
Dude, that link you have in here doesn't have anything in it.
Oh,
like, there's no product.
Well, I'll have to update it.
Yeah, the products still exist. All right,
okay,
we'll find them. Anyways, there's a bunch of them. Alpine, Bazooka.
Oh yeah,
really want one of those.
Rockford Fosgate, they sell them as
Clarion,
well.
Fusion, never heard of Fusion before. I'm sure they're good. Infinity has some too.
Yeah,
JBL.
but I know and trust JL Audio, so
Yeah.
That's where I'd point you.
So he doesn't have any sort of enclosure for the backs of his in-wall speakers. And if the subwoofers go in-wall, they'll have open back in the same equipment room as the front speakers. Would they affect each other? Should he build boxes for the backs of the speakers and or subs? That's a really good question.
I'd put an enclosure on the back of the speakers. That's what I'd do.
Yeah, I guess just to be okay. So your subwoofer is going to the driver's going to be moving in and out. It's going to be pushing basically, as it moves into the whatever room it's moving air. It's pushing air into it, right? So that's causing some an increased amount of pressure there, and then when it sucks back out to go, to the other room as the driver goes back and forth, it's going to create a bit of a vacuum. Could that affect your main speakers? I think the answer is yes, it could.
Yeah.
Would it audibly affect your speakers? The answer is I don't know. It would depend on how big that equipment room is that you're talking about too.
But I mean, it does affect things like inside a speaker cabinet, inside a tower speaker. They'll typically seal off the tweeter, and more often than not, they'll seal off the mid-range driver as well, so that the woofers aren't having that pressure effect on the other drivers within the cabinet of the speaker. Now your cabinet has essentially become the room that's behind these in-wall speakers and subs. I would just seal off the in-wall speakers. I mean, they're essentially meant to work within the bay of a standard wall. So you could even just close in the bay of the wall, because in the image he has one of these in-wall speakers. It's just in the middle of the bay of a normal wall.
I gotta scroll up. There it is, right there.
Just close off the bay of that wall, and there you go. That's sealed in that in-wall speaker. You put the in-wall sub in a different bay, and Bob's your uncle. You're done.
I mean, with the subs, you've created an infinite baffle sub.
That's right.
This is what you've done,
or close to it.
Or close to it. Right. I would. Yeah, that makes sense. Just throw a 2x4 above and below it, and little piece of plywood or something and fill it with insulation or whatever.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be anything fancy, because you don't care about the looks in the back of the room. So
those are way up at the top too. Is that what those are? I guess. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Michael, I'm not reading all these little words, right?
No. That's just the image that was sent.
Okay. Michael first wanted to thank us for our previous advice. He found GIC Acoustics in Europe to make him some printed acoustic panels that passed the design committee's approval. So we have 4 panels on his back wall, and the panel beside his left front speaker to catch a first reflection. Panels on the ceiling didn't get approval, not surprisingly, but a Voice of God speaker for Oro 3D did. I'm just shocked that that's even a thing. And by the way, the newest denim models can actually reassign the surround back left binding post to power the Voice of God speakers, so it isn't strictly a pre-out channel anymore. So it doesn't take over a subwoofer. It's more important than that.
Right.
So he'll be going for a larger TV with a 12-foot seating distance. So all of that is thanks to our advice. The way I hear that is you just spent a bunch of money because of us, and we're sorry. We're sorry. And
I think he's going to be pleased, though. Like, those GIC panels look great, because those aren't even printed panels. They're dyed.
Oh, yeah.
So their process looks really excellent. So, yeah. I think he'll be pleased.
I'm just scrolling through these pictures real fast while I'm looking at this. Okay. I'll scroll over when we actually talk about the question to see the things, the pictures as we were talking about them. He'd like to be able to use a pair of Bluetooth headphones, but still have the ability to have his main zone speakers playing. So could he connect a Bluetooth transmitter to his zone 2 pre-outs of his Denon AV receiver? Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. The caveat being anything that you want to play out of that, what would now be your Bluetooth transmitter, which is connected to your Zone 2 pre-outs, anything that you want to play has to be sending a stereo signal. So that's the caveat there.
He'd also like to use Hios, but he's realizing that all of his sources would need a 2-channel signal. Since he will have his sources plugged into his Denon using HDMI, then he'll be feeding his TV with the Denon's HDMI output. Could he use the TV to downmix whatever sound is playing to 2-channel, then send the sound back from the TV to the Denon using a stereo analog connection, or even the TV's headphone jack? That way, whatever's playing would automatically get a 2-channel downmix version, and he wouldn't have to send 2-channel directly from his sources to his Denon. Would that work? No, I don't think so, dude. That doesn't really work that way, unfortunately.
No, for a few reasons. One, in the Denon, it says when the audio is coming in there's a setting that says, do you want this sound played out of the Denon or do you want the sound played out of your TV? Because it can pass it through to the TV if you want it to, but it won't do both simultaneously. It won't play it in surround sound itself and continue to send the audio via HDMI to the TV as well. So that part already doesn't work. Then, if you were going for lossless audio, which clearly with a full Oro 3D setup and Atmos setup and everything, you're bit streaming lossless audio, your TV isn't going to be able to decode that at all. So that you'd be stuck sending Dolby Digital 5.1 only in all scenarios for this idea to work. So basically know what you need to do if you want to be able to send all of your sources both to your full surround sound system and via HEOS, and for that matter to your Bluetooth headphones connected to the Zone 2 preouts. You need stereo connections for the audio for your sources.
Yeah.
That's kind of just the way it ends up being. Now, you can have, say, an HDMI connection. Let's say it's your cable box, right?
Right.
You can have the HDMI connection and the stereo analog audio connection. When you want to play full surround sound, you just go to the HDMI input. When you want to use the Bluetooth or you want to use the HEOS, you set that, the Zone 2, you set to the stereo analog input. Or the HEOS, you set to the stereo analog input. And that way they can both be playing at the same time. They might not be synchronized, but they'll both be playing at the same time. And that'll work using the two outputs of the source. That's kind of what you need to do.
For his Voice of God channel, he'd like to use the same speakers as he's using for his Atmos Height channels, the Magnat Cinema 400, but they're only sold in pairs. And his couch is 10 feet wide. So what do we think of wiring a pair of speakers in series and using them in mono as the Voice of God channel? I'm going to be dead honest with you. I think you should just keep one of those speakers in the box.
That's one way. I mean,
well, I think.
If you were to go to an Oro 3D theater, like an actual full-on cinema, that's Oro 3D, they use 4 Voice of God speakers. They're all playing in mono, but they use 4 physical speakers to play the one mono Voice of God channel. So it's not like there's no precedent for using more than one speaker to play the Voice of God channel. They are going to be playing in mono. So, I mean, I don't know.
If you're going to do it, I would put with them like front and like in a line, front and back.
Oh, really?
I would not put them side to side.
Side to side?
I don't think so. I don't know.
If you put them side to side so that they're optimized for your primary listening position, because you're going to get stereo, even though it's overhead.
Yeah,
it is side to side.
Just leave one in the box.
Keep a spare. It actually is the easiest.
That is the easiest and the actual correct thing to do, because your theater is not big enough for that.
And it's not going to look asymmetrical because it's one speaker in the middle.
Yeah.
So
you'll be fine. Yeah. And then if one of your speakers breaks, boom, you're done.
True.
Booyah. Taken care of. All right, Kevin. Kevin currently has a pair of Acoustic Research Phantom 8.3 horizontally mounted, wall-mounted, and wired in parallel, acting as a single center channel behind his acoustically transparent screen. This means he has dual tweeters nearly 10 inches apart, which he knows is not ideal. So he's looking to replace the setup with a single center speaker. It's an acoustically transparent screen?
Yes.
Okay. He has 4 sofas in this room, including one against the back wall, 25 feet from the front speakers, where he sometimes sits for music listening. He wants to be able to crank it loud without worrying, and in general, be able to exceed reference volume at all seats without distortion or putting strain on the system. Okay. He's considered the Klipsch reference RC64 II. I don't know this. The DefTech CS 9080s, the Axiom Audio VP 180, the RBH Impression R56CI. He decided to buy the RBH and try it out, but before he tore his theater apart, he gave it a test listen in his bedroom setup, and he was not pleased. Running a frequency sweep at reference volume, there was a mechanical buzz at 150. So should he have RBH send him as replacement and see if the buzzing was just this particular speaker, or should he move on to other options? And are there other high output speakers that we would recommend over the RBH anyway.
So this is a dismaying number of RBH impression series speakers we've heard with these buzzing problems, because this is not the first instance we've heard of this.
This is like the second, right? Or third, maybe?
This is like third or fourth time that we've heard about this. I wonder if they had a bad batch.
They must have had a bad batch, and I would definitely send it back and call them because they're going to like totally hook you up, okay? And
because everybody so far they've replaced it, no question.
Yeah.
Because it shouldn't be. It flat out shouldn't be buzzing like that.
Yeah. All right, so the ones you're looking at here are the clips. Those will probably play plenty loud and be nice. The DefTechs, I don't know anything about them. The Axiom, do not.
That one. It's the same problem you already have. Two tweeters way too far
problem
apart.
Too. Yeah, don't. In the impression series, trying to think of anybody else that would be a good fit here.
I mean, for 25 feet away, trying to hit reference volume from that, I would say even the RBH is going to struggle to do that as loud as it can play when it's working properly.
Right.
25 feet away, full reference volume.
What about those speakers with like the multiple tweeters or whatever it was that was their whole idea was to be extremely efficient, extremely loud? What was that company that I didn't like? I mean, I didn't like it, not like it.
Like Tecton?
Yes, Tecton. What about them?
Yeah, that'd be one. They're high efficiency.
Yeah, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for super duper high efficiency and high power handling.
Yeah, so, along those lines, the one I would point you to is Power Sound Audio. Power Sound Audio sells speakers as well as subs. Oh yeah,
I did not know that.
Compression tweeter.
That's
huge power handling, and actually, from the review that Mark Henninger did over in AV's forum, very neutral sound.
And they would look fantastic behind a screen.
They sure would, because man, are they just a plain black box.
Ugly speaker. I mean, that speaker is only a mother could love that speaker. That is an ugly, ugly speaker.
Now it's more expensive than the RBH. What is it, $800 some odd dollars?
75.
Shipping is included in that, so at least it's not shipping extra. So it is more expensive, but compared to some of the other ones that you were considering, like it's less expensive than the Axiom, that's for sure, and that DefTech, that particular
Axiom VP at 180 is over $875. Are you kidding me?
Oh heavens, yes, dude, it's Axiom. They're so expensive these days. But no, Power Sound Audio is where I would point you for this, because I
agree.
You know,
I agree.
That'll work.
I actually agree. I mean, I think over the other ones that you have here, you've already got the RBH. They're gonna send you another one if you ask them to.
Right.
I would call Power Sound Audio as well. I think that the Power Sound is probably the only one that's gonna be able to hit as loud as you want. Look at the Tecton as well. I mean, they may have something for you. I don't know. I don't know the speaker brand very well. People who have them love them. All right, but what does that mean? Nothing. So there you go. Damon on Twitter. Damon wants a projector that's good for gaming and has a quiet fan. He's contemplating either the Epson Home Cinema 3900 or the Sony HW45ES. He does not care about 3D. Thoughts?
Do you have a dark room or a bright room?
Yeah. Isn't the 3900 like a light cannon?
It is.
And isn't that... It's not quite entry level, right? Because I reviewed the 37.
But it's not what you would call an ultra black projector. It's a living room projector.
Yeah, and honestly, okay, I will tell you from my review of the 3700, I will say that that thing started up so loud. I mean, it was like, if somebody had told me that there was a little man inside there that was like pulling the string like on a lawnmower to get it started, I totally would have believed you. It's not that loud in operation, but it is not a quiet projector. If the 3900 is on the par with that one, which I believe it probably is, it's not going to be quiet. It's going to be.
It does not satisfy the quiet fan request.
It's
I mean,
beautiful though. It's got a really good picture. It's very bright.
It's very, very bright. Yeah, the Sony, the HW45 is an excellent projector. It does qualify as an ultra black projector. It's not as bright as the 3900. It's certainly no slouch in terms of brightness. It's still like 2500 lumens, but it's not the 37 something hundred lumens that the Epsons can pump out. So if you have a light controlled room, I don't even say it has to be pitch black, but if pitch black, great. But if you have a light controlled room, I would absolutely go with the Sony. It's definitely quieter. Great image, higher contrast, deeper black levels, just not as overall bright.
I love Epsons. I do.
Oh, yeah.
But you just got to, I mean, they have different projectors for different purposes.
Yeah.
And this is not a quiet projector. This is a projector that you will be able to see in ambient light.
Yeah.
It does make a really nice picture. I've got no problems with it, but it does have a few failings, and I don't think you're going to be happy with it.
No,
so,
when the key thing you want to do is overcome ambient light, that's the choice.
Yeah.
But assuming you have some light control, the HW45 in this case, for sure.
Troy has a theater that's 10 feet by 17 feet by 7.5 feet. He's been using Klipsch speakers in there. Ooh, that's awfully close. But a few months ago, he bought...
Klipsch has a large variety of speakers, man. It's not like every...
Just saying that that if you looked on the APC and see how much power you were drawing to your speakers, the number would be very tiny.
Not enough to register.
like 0.000 watts. All right, Troy has a 10, but whatever. He's been using Klipsch speakers. A few months ago, he bought a pair of Send Acoustic Sierra 2 speakers for his living room 2-channel system. Now he wants something more linear for his theater. The Sierra 2s would be a bit too expensive, though, so what are some less expensive options? EMP Tech, ELAC, what do we think? So he likes the Sierra 2s.
He does?
I mean, what is his price point here? Because EMP Techs are quite inexpensive, and so are the ELACs. So
if we're talking the debut series,
Yeah, so I'm guessing that's what he wants, something in that range, which means...
I'm thinking so.
Entry level. I mean, those are both great options.
Yeah, those are both fine options,
This is 10 by 7.
I mean, my thought is, why not stick with Ascend Acoustics?
Of course it is your thought. Those were always your thoughts. Everyone should go to Ascend Acoustics.
No, but
you're a shell, sir. A shell.
He likes the Sierra 2s enough that he's like, I think I'd like to replace all of my speakers. And yet, why not Ascend Acoustics for the rest of they have less expensive speakers. They don't sound exactly like the Sierra 2s, but they sound very neutral. That's for darn sure.
So there are, I mean, okay, there's going to be options there that Rob will probably tell you about at length and nauseum and a very long email. There'll also be a Pairing Audio would be a good place
the
to
Intimus
look.
series would be a good choice.
Kef would be a good place to look, especially since you can get them over
accessories
for less on P-Stock or whatever. Some other model people are coming to mind here.
NHT?
Sure. They have options as well that are good. And you're sitting close enough to all these things that it doesn't matter. Don't buy towers. You don't need them. Get bookshelves or something smaller. I mean, you don't need big speakers.
But I mean, we don't discount EMP Tech or ELAC either, because also very fine choices.
Oh, yeah. I thought we already said that.
No, it's just, we've been naming these other ones as though maybe
I'm just trying to come up with other options for you that I know are in that same price range.
I mean, maybe looks are a concern, right? Because the Ascends, if you're looking at the SE series, certainly nothing fancy looking about them. So if aesthetics are a concern, then some of these other ones would be better choices. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, the problem is we just expanded his list. We didn't help him narrow it down at all. So we just gave more options.
So he prefers bookshelf speakers. Good.
Tom has no response to that.
Nope. And he's going to have dual subwoofers in this theater, so bass extension isn't really a concern. But both Tom and Rob, you and I, have fairly small rooms yet have opted for either tower fronts or very large bookshelf fronts. Why? Is there really any real need for larger speakers in this theater? Okay, so I did not opt for these. Okay, Pairing Audio called me and asked me to do a review, and this is what they wanted me to review. It lives here now, and if someday they called me and say I want them back, I would say send me some boxes, because I threw those boxes away like literally years ago. But I would send them back. So these are not my speakers. I would send them back tomorrow. If I bought and at the time, they wanted me to review the entire line, so I reviewed the bookshelf speakers kind of standalone, because they didn't have surround speakers at the time, and then these, and then their center channel. I would have bookshelf speakers given the option. That's what I would have. I would not have tower speakers, but since I have them, I have them. In my room, I don't need tower speakers. I cross them over. There's no need for them. You're absolutely right. My thought, I mean, there's always that thought in the back of my mind, is that I'm going to win the lottery, get a bigger room, and I'll need big speakers then. But since I never play the lottery, it doesn't seem to be very likely that's going to happen. But, you know, I could find a lottery ticket on the ground. It's possible.
Well, I do play the lottery, and my likelihood of winning is about equal as yours at not playing. So
there we go.
Yeah, but if I had bought speakers for the size of room that I have, I mean, even bookshelves would be too big. I should be looking at NHT Super Zeros or something. Like,
right.
You know, the Sierra Lunas didn't exist at the time, but even those would play louder than anything I need. No, the speakers I chose were similar idea. The idea is that these are my forever speakers. So
right.
no matter what room I go to, and hopefully I'll have a much larger room at some point in my future, the speakers are ready to handle that. So yeah, absolutely
Rob has a much better chance of getting a bigger room. My housing choices
well, not where I live.
I'm
going to have to
move
move to another part of the country because, you know, a house here is $2 million and up. So that's just not in the cards.
Those fat AV dollars AV Rant dollars aren't bankrolling your baller lifestyle. Not yet.
One day we should say how many of those dollars have actually made them my way or anyone else's way.
The only way they go is to my wife. She says, we need more money.
The reason is because she bankrolled the podcast for all of the early years. She is very much still indebted for keeping AV Rant afloat. So, yeah.
Well, not only that, I mean, Clint also helps bankroll this thing, too.
Right,
so I should be paying him money. But
he hasn't had a dime, has he?
He hasn't had a dime. If anything, he's paid out of pocket. Jeez. I don't even want to get into it. All right. John, this comes from Facebook. What are the chances that a disc or streaming service will exclusively use Dolby Vision for HDR? Could people with HDR10 only TVs or players wind up out of luck?
So this was actually the case for Voodoo, right? Voodoo was Dolby Vision only until they added HDR10 support, but it didn't come to every movie. Some movies are HDR10, some movies are Dolby Vision, some movies are both, but it's not everything fits within the same Venn diagram. So honestly, the likelihood is that we will see more and more movies that support both. Because if we're talking about Ultra HD Blu-ray, HDR10 is mandated. So your choices are no HDR, or if you have HDR, you must have at least HDR10.
Right.
And then Dolby Vision is an option on top of that if you want it on an Ultra HD Blu-ray. So for discs, if you support HDR10 in your display, you're good. That is mandated. You will always have that. For the streaming services, I think, if anything, it's going to support both more frequently. The likelihood of it being Dolby Vision only is really, really small. Because the way Dolby Vision is set up, it doesn't have to be dual layer, but it easily can be. The so-called base layer can be HDR10, and then the Dolby Vision extensions can be the second layer on top of that, and that's exactly how Ultra HD Blu-ray is set up for Dolby Vision. So I think that's the more likely scenario.
There you go.
Yeah.
Jim recently added a vintage Technics turntable.
Panasonic.
And I haven't seen them in a long time. Technics EQ Spectrum Analyzer to a system. Okay, I don't know what the EQ Spectrum Analyzer is. It the thing that makes the smiley face?
It's the lights. It's the lights.
Oh, the thing that goes up, the lights?
The lights.
Love those things. Totally
Analyzes the spectrum, bounces the lights.
Bounces the lights. Anyways, he did an AVR X3300W, doesn't have a phono input, but he solved that with an external phono preamp, but he's having trouble with the EQ analyzer. He's not using it for an actual EQ. He just wants the bouncing light bars for the old school aesthetic. So all he needs is to have it receive an audio signal.
Yeah.
What is so hard about this? Yes, dude. I want to tell you that somebody listening to this podcast is waiting for me to rip into this guy for being pet. This is an awesome idea that I would totally steal. If I had one of those things, I would be doing the same thing.
When he was talking vintage, I bet he found this at like a garage sale or a used, pawn shop or something.
Absolutely.
I bet he didn't pay like a huge amount of money for this. And the glowing bouncing lights, I'm like, yeah, that is cool.
That is so cool. All right, so he's tried using the front speaker pre-outs from the X3300, but the signal was very low and the light bars on the EQ barely made even a blip during the peaks. So he connected the EQ to the Zone 2 RCA outputs, the Zone 2 volume way up, the light bars bounce like they should, but now he has the annoyance of having to turn on both zones and remember turn off Zone 2 when he's done. Could he use a cheap headphone amplifier connected to the speaker pre-outs to feed the EQ? Just EQ to a boosted signal rather than the Zone 2 solution he has now. He doesn't want to buy a Harmony remote, and the Harmony wouldn't work with the turntable and spectrum analyzer anyway. They're both old enough that they only have manual power switches. Well, I actually kind of think that would work. Wouldn't that work?
It should, because I mean, you're taking a stereo analog signal, feeding it into a headphone amplifier, which would send out a stereo analog signal.
I mean, we're calling it a headphone amplifier. It's any sort of thing with the volume knob on it.
Yeah, it's just that it's not speaker binding posts on the other end of it. Is the
that's the
I'm
key.
making?
Yeah, that's the key. So yeah,
it should work. Yeah,
should work. I like it. Send us a picture.
Wouldn't have to be terribly expensive at all. So it's not like you need fantastic fidelity for the bouncing lights.
Just lights. Pretty lights.
And for anyone who's saying, why doesn't he just turn up the output level of the pre-outs? Well, it's because if you did that, it would affect the actual speakers as well. Yeah. Because you have the one trim level and the one master volume. It affects both the pre-outs and the speaker binding posts on the receivers. So that isn't a solution. So yeah, I think your idea would work.
So speaking of which, the X3300W also lack switched AC outlets. I haven't seen any of those in a while.
Yeah,
so
it's been a while.
Is there any way to easily power everything on instead of having to manually power on the turntable and spectrum analyzer individually every time? Yes, he agrees that these are first world problems. Thank you, sir, for acknowledging that. There are switched outlets on things like APCs and other devices.
Yeah, and you wouldn't even have to go APC, because sometimes to get what they call it like master and slave power outlets.
Yeah.
And sometimes to get that feature on APC is strangely higher up in their lineup. So if you just go to Home Depot, you can probably find
them. Yeah.
Yeah, like just a power, like a power strip, right?
Yeah.
But you want one that has master and slave output, so that when power is being drawn from the master outlet, it then automatically switches on the slave outlets.
Right.
And that means when you click the power button to power up your X3300, that will then power on the slave outlets, which will then fire up your other equipment.
And when you do that, you have to listen to Depeche Mode at the same time. Has to be. All right. That was a bad joke. I take it back. I'm sorry, sir. Lance has a 9.1 Atmos system. Recently, while watching a Blu-ray on his Xbox One S, he noticed the subwoofer was silent when it shouldn't have been. He stopped watching and ran the Dolby Amaze demo, and same thing, no subwoofer. He switched over to Kodi, ran the Dolby demo again, and it shook the house. He has his Xbox Blu-ray option set to Bitstream, and the app is up to date. So what's going on here, and what can he do about it? That's part one. Part two. Update. Lance just emailed before the podcast to say that Bitstream audio from his Xbox One S seems to be working fine now. He had no idea what changed, but now his subwoofer sounds fine. It's a turn it off, turn it back on solution. That's what it is.
Unfortunately, yeah. He was like, maybe there was an update or something. I don't even think it was that.
It's turn it off, turn it back on.
In the most recent full update that they did, they added Windows Sonic and Dolby Atmos for like everything. Like you can have Dolby Atmos for games or anything now. It's just part of the sound settings. I was using the Windows Sonic just to try it out, right? Which is their version of, virtualized surround sound, and that was watching some Netflix. All of a sudden it went to horrible distortion. I was like, lovely. So I went into the settings, turned off Windows Sonic, turned it back on in the settings, right? Didn't power down the Xbox or anything. I just turned it off, turned it back on in the setting. It was fine. Totally fine. So I think that's all it was. It was a,
this is why audiophiles have the kind of ammunition they do. You know that, right? This is it. Audiophiles will constantly tell you, how, like, when you're using your computer or using something like that, sometimes it gets weird and freaky. That's because it does too much stuff. You need to have everything just doing one thing, and then it does it well. And therefore, it should cost $3,000 per component, and it should be made of plate glass and platinum.
But yeah, this was a weird bug. Going back to the whole using the Xbox One S as an Ultra HD Blu-ray player, this is the type of thing people have been complaining about, right?
Right.
The audio got all garbage. Stuff got out of sync. The thing dropped HDR. It's like, you turn it off, you turn it back on. Like even just within the setting, not even a full power down cycle, right? for some reason. So, I think it's because
But if
so
you're
much of
running
this is
into
being
this
done
problem,
software.
this is important. That's why we're still reading this question, even though
That's right.
Lance figured it out for himself by waiting.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that's the
he
solution.
probably did a full reset at some point for some reason, and there you go, fixed it.
Or just got sick of it, turned it off, and left the room, and then later on came back to it, turned it back on. Who knows? Yeah, it's frustrating. I understand that, and you want to see me crawl the walls, get the lips out of sync when I'm watching the video. I will completely lose it. Like I know my lip sync is dead on, and there's at least one show. I think it's early episodes of White Collar that the lips are out of sync, and it drives me nuts. And I'm looking at my wife, and she's watching the same show I'm watching, and she's having a great time. And I'm like, how are you not noticing this? And I just want to say, can't you tell that their lips aren't in sync? And because then she'll notice, and then she'll go, nah. And that would be it. Or I could ruin it for her, then she'd be mad at me. So I don't say anything because I'm a smart man. He asks, who are we talking to now? I forgot.
Lance,
Nathan?
still.
Lance. He asks, is there any way to make sure that the Marantz SR6010 displays the audio codec of the current signal instead of the input name? It flashes temporarily when acquiring a signal, but it doesn't stay. He doesn't like having to check manually to see if he's getting the right signal from his Xbox or from Kodi. Is he talking about on the front? On
yeah,
the
little porthole display, which is the only display that the SR6010 has. And unfortunately, the answer is no.
Yeah. Mine does. But I have a Denon, and it has a much bigger display.
Has the bigger display, yeah. Unfortunately, no. With the single little porthole display, it doesn't give you the option of doing that. You can press the info button to bring it up on screen. Like you say, it flashes when it's first acquiring the signal. But no, I hear you. That's something I would like the option to do as well. But unfortunately, the answer is no. There's no setting you can do to do that.
So we've just probably discussed it before, but what are some of our favorite Blu-rays in terms of picture and sound?
John Wick.
Yeah. I love me some John Wick. That's such a dad movie, though. I mean, it's such a dad movie. I just got Logan. The version I have actually came with the noir version, which I guess is a black and white version. Haven't watched that yet, but I don't know that the sound's all that great. I mean, it was fine, but I don't know that it stunned me in terms of sound or picture.
I have to say, I went and saw Wonder Woman on opening night.
Yeah, how was that?
Movie, by the way. I really like. Easily the best DC movie. Like, not that it had much to reach for, but
low bar, sir.
Yeah, no, really, really good. Everyone should go and see it. I have to say, I was very impressed by the Atmos sound in the theater. So a lot of times in the theater, I'm not as impressed by the Atmos sound as in my own home theater, where things are more discreet than that. But this was a really good. I think they're getting better at these Atmos mixes. I gotta say, I think the mixers are figuring it out. So that'll be one to watch when it comes out. The one I always like to mention in terms of picture, because it's not one that anyone would ever think of, but The Shining on Blu-ray.
Yeah.
I really like that because in all likelihood, you have never seen that movie with correct colors. Even the Blu-ray probably isn't fully correct colors because it was, full film, so even beyond DCI-P3 color. But yeah, the Blu-ray of The Shining, I'm always like it's subtle, right? But it really gets me. So I like that one for picture quality.
Picture quality, all right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many. I mean, I've got Blu-rays of Porcupine Tree. We've got Blu-rays of Blue Band Group, of Diana Krall. Those all got fantastic audio.
Yeah, Chris Body in Boston is a favorite of mine for sure for the audio.
I mean, that's just pure audio quality.
It is. I mean, it's a concert. It's a live concert.
Porcupine Tree has got... The one thing that kind of bugs me is that the one guitar guy always comes out of... I think if I'm remembering it correctly, I haven't watched in a while, one guitar guy comes out of one speaker and the other guy comes out of the other one, or the bassist or something. And I'm like, they anchor them. I don't know. I have more of a relativistic. I mean, if the camera's panning around, but it's good. Blue Man Group I like a lot. Diana Krall I like a lot. I mean, there's lots of Blu-rays and discs out there that have interesting sound effects that you might use to show things off. Lots of stuff has tons of bass that you. I mean, pick a Pixar movie. I mean, literally anyone. They find an excuse to use subsonic bass in every movie that they do. Pacific Rim. I mean, if you really want to just silliness, but yeah, there's lots of good stuff out there. What it really comes down to is what movies do you really like. and what type of movies you like, because there's going to be perfect examples for you in every genre. You just except for maybe rom-com, you're gonna be able to find something in there. So I don't really know if that's true about rom-com. I just made that up because I thought it'd be funny. Mike is using a Marantz SR6005 for a surround sound and a separate stereo preamp for 2-channel music. He's only using one pair of front speakers, though, so they are pulling double duty. He's never used subwoofers before, but now he's thinking he'd like to add dual subwoofers. Way to go, jumping in the deep end. And he'd want to use them for both his surround sound and his 2-channel listening. The Marantz has only basic Odyssey multi-Q, so he prefer to use outboard EQ for the subwoofers, almost certainly a mini DSP, he says. Mike didn't specify in his email whether he's using any external amplification, but he basically wants to know how he can connect both of his surround sound systems, and both his surround sound system and his separate 2-channel preamp, so that both setups are using the mini DSP and the dual subwoofers and the front speakers. In particular, if he sets his front speakers to large in the Marantz and his center, and it surrounds to small, with all the bass LFE and the bass from the center and the surrounds get sent to his front speaker pre-outs.
So that second question. The simple, straightforward answer is yes. If you say so, this goes for any surround sound receiver. If you say you do not have a subwoofer, it will automatically set your front speakers to large.
Right.
At which point, all of the bass, whether it's from the dedicated LFE channel or from the speakers that you've set to small, all of the bass then gets sent to those large front speakers.
Whatever the speakers are that are large. Yeah, whatever set is large. So if you set your round backs as large.
So strictly answering that's the case. But there's basically two scenarios here, right? One is that he has an external stereo amplifier to power his front left and right speakers.
Yes.
And he is using some sort of speaker selector switch to switch between the pre-outs of his Marantz surround sound receiver and the pre-outs of his stereo 2-channel preamp.
Right.
That would be fine. Now, if that's the case, you would simply feed the output of that speaker selector switch to your mini DSP first. The mini DSP can then send the signal that goes to your front, left, right speakers, because it has 4 outputs. It has 2 inputs and 4 outputs. So you would send the left and right inputs of the mini DSP. That would be being fed by whatever is already feeding your amplifier. And then 2 of the mini DSP's outputs would go to the amplifier that you're using right now, and the other 2 would go to your dual subwoofers. So it's the exact, if you have a stereo external amplifier right now, it's the exact same setup you have. You're just putting the mini DSP in between the selector switch and the amplifier. That's that scenario.
I'm sure that we're answering this question correctly. He is using surround sound. I mean, he's using
a surround sound system and a separate stereo preamp, but somehow both of them are feeding the same pair of front speakers.
Fine. And if that's the case, then is he using the mini DSP just for the sub, or does he want to use it for all of his speakers?
No, he wants the mini DSP just for the subs.
Okay.
Yeah. So, like I say, if you're using an external stereo amp right now, the mini DSP is just going to get inserted in the signal chain in between whatever it is you're using to choose between either the pre-outs of your surround sound AV receiver or the pre-outs of your stereo preamp. You're using something to switch between those two. So
why can't he just set the front speakers to small and then put the DSP between the mini DSP between the subwoofer output of both?
Well, this is the other scenario. The other scenario is you're using the stereo 2-channel preamp to feed one of the inputs of your Marantz SR6005. That might be the case. Maybe he's just going, I have this stereo preamp, it feeds one of the stereo analog inputs of the SR6005. If that's the case, you can do all the bass management inside the Marantz.
Right.
You would set all of the speakers to small. You would set the subwoofer to on, or yes.
Yes, right.
And now the subwoofer output would feed the mini DSP, and the mini DSP would feed your subwoofers. That's all there is to that one. So that's the simpler one. The simpler one is that your Marantz is handling all of the amplification right now, and you just happen to be using this separate stereo preamp to feed one of the pairs of inputs on the Marantz.
As long as you're not using like a pure direct mode when they're going through from your stereo preamp.
Right, you'd have to use the stereo listening mode.
Yeah, something that allows space management. That would be the easiest way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, he's never used subwoofers before, so he's not used to the all speakers set to small, subwoofer set to on. He hasn't used that setting before. But if all of the amplification is happening inside your Marantz, that's going to be the setup. All your speakers set to small, subwoofer set to yes or on or whatever it is. Then the subwoofer output.
I'm guessing that's not how he has this thing set up.
Maybe not. Yeah, that's why I'm saying if you do have a stereo external amplifier, then somehow you are choosing which set of pre-outs are feeding that external amplifier. So some way you're doing that.
Yeah, you
so
got to.
that same output from that selector switch is now going to feed the mini DSP, and then the mini DSP is going to feed both your external 2-channel amplifier and your dual subwoofers. It has the 4 outputs.
In that case, you would keep the mains to large so that you could strip the bass out of it.
That's right.
And then let the mini DSP would then basically strip all the bass from that, send it to your subwoofers, and then that's essentially setting your front speakers to small. In essence,
well, it's bass managing them inside the mini DSP
rather than doing it inside the
Marantz. So yeah, either way, there is a way to do this.
Yeah, Nathan. First
question.
Nathan got his parents all set up. We were 2.5 hours almost.
I know.
Of course, it's the last question. I'm literally blurry. I can hardly read. Nathan Nathan got his parents all set up with a Denon X4300H receiver, new equipment rack, freestanding panels from Gick Acoustics, and the Helios 1 speakers with an optional battery pack for the backyard. He was pleasantly surprised by how quickly he was able to put it all together and the ease with which his parents can use the Helios and Denon apps on their iPads to control everything.
Awesome.
Unrelated to that, he's toured several high-end audio shops in this area, and he's been very disappointed with the experience. The most expensive equipment is set up in treated drums, although not even set up very well in some cases, while the less expensive gear gets bare cube-shaped rooms or just wide-open spaces where they're guaranteed to sound worse. Worst of all, none of the dealers have been willing to move components around to allow for true A/B comparisons. So how are people supposed to actually compare? Would things be different if he calls ahead to make an appointment? Is dealing directly with manufacturers to get in-home trials really the only way? Yeah, some dudes are buttheads. I mean, when it comes down to it, I mean, and you're seeing right here exactly why people come to us to answer their questions, because that's ridiculous. They have said that they've clearly set up their rooms so that the good gear has the best chance to sound good, and the bad gear, or the good gear, the expensive stuff is in the good rooms, the cheap stuff is not. That's clearly the case.
And it's fairly easy to reason out why they would be doing that. They want you to spend more money.
Absolutely. And that's fine. I mean, it's a sales tactic, and I can't begrudge them that. At the same time, they're like, can I move this speaker around so that I can do this? No, you can't move that speaker around, because what if you scratch it or drop it or push it over or dent it or something? We're going to be out that amount of money. And same thing here. I don't want to move it because what if I scratch it or dent it or something, and I'm going to be out that amount of money? What's the solution here? Well, go to a different shop, I guess, is one of them. But you said you've been to a few. It's not impossible. The way that, and this is, I don't know if this is a well-known fact, but I'll go ahead and say it anyways. Audioholics started with Gene essentially reviewing, it was a blog essentially when it first started. And Gene was reviewing audio equipment at a local high-end shop where he had a good relationship with the people, and they let him come in there and listen to the gear and take pictures and stuff like that and review it. And that's how Audioholics started. I think that's, a fairly common way these things start. It's not impossible. You got to find somebody that's cool, somebody that you can get in a relationship with, or you have to be somebody that clearly is going to come in there and spend $100,000, in which case they will let you move whatever the hell you want.
Yeah, once you've spent a lot of money, they'll become a lot more willing to accommodate your requests to move things around and compare them.
Go in there as and this may not work. It may not. Go in there as a geek. I mean, you're a geek. You're geeky about audio. They are certainly that somebody in that store is gonna be geeky about audio, and you're gonna have to connect with them on that level, and then let them do. I mean, I went in there with CDs and SACDs, and they were like, "What's an SACD?" I'm like, are you kidding me right now? I'm listening to $25,000 a pair of speakers right now, and you don't know what an SACD is? Like, never heard of it. Fine. At least they could play the CDs. With the DVDs or the SACDs, or I even had some like DTS discs, and they couldn't play any of that. Only the CDs. That was as far up the audio chain as they went. And this was back when SACD was still a thing. So, I mean, it seemed like that would be...
we're going to get a letter from the SACD fans now.
Hey, you know what? Feel free, write it on in, buddy. Yeah, that thing's taken off. I was a big advocate for making sure universal players were still a thing. Yep. SACD, yes. I mean, I still don't hear... Most of the time, it's the exact... Going back to our vinyl guy, it's the exact same mix. It's the exact same master. They did nothing but output it in a higher resolution and put it on a different disc. And people are like, hey, well, you can clearly hear more depth. Shut up. It is the same thing. Sometimes it's not. And when it's not, you can hear a difference. Or at least it's possible. But many times it's the exact same thing. So.
But yeah, the calling ahead, I mean, it is about forming a relationship, to be honest, because very often... If you can get a good relationship going, and typically you have to be with the manager or at least the person who opens and or closes the store, because sometimes, especially if you're like bringing your own speakers in to compare or your own amplifier in or something like that, they won't do it during store hours. But sometimes if you get a good relationship, it's like, hey, we're here an hour before opening every time. And if you can get a relationship good enough, you can come in early and do that type of thing, or stay late after they've closed. So it's often outside of business hours is the only time they're willing to do that sort of thing. But I mean, that's
slow
all about
times. You know, I mean, like during the week when there's a lot of people coming in.
Yeah,
maybe they might be more willing when they're bored. You know, buy them a sandwich or something. I don't know. So,
but honestly, I think the in-home trial is always the best if you can, because it's your room, it's your associated equipment, it's your recordings that you are going to be listening to in your seat. So it's all of those things. You're removing a ton of the variables, because trying to make an A/B comparison in a store, it's still going to sound different once you bring it home, because then it's your room and your acoustics and your associated equipment. So the in-home trial to me is the best way to go if you can do it.
Okay. All right. Well, that's the questions for this week. Let's go ahead and thank once again our listeners of the week. We want to thank Mark, Vincent, Nathan, and David. They went to www.avrant.com and clicked on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link and left us a PayPal donation. So thank you, Mark, Vincent, Nathan, and David.
I'll say it again. Mark, Vincent, Nathan, David, thank you all so much for those donations.
I also want to thank Mark and Nathan for talking us up to SVS and Herb over at Cross Spectrum Labs, respectively. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, and congrats on your purchases. I am sure you will love them both.
Yes. Herb, in particular, if you guys don't know, if you don't remember, Herb at Cross Spectrum Labs, he sells calibrated microphones. So it's a really reasonable price too. Mm-hmm. So, and no, he doesn't advertise with us.
Tiny little markup.
It is literally a tiny. It's like kind of ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, it feels like, I don't know how much it is, but it's not that much, not compared to the retail price of the microphone. All right. If you want to get your question answered on this podcast, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You contact us directly by leaving a comment on the website, www.avrant.com, facebook.com/avrantpodcast, youtube.com/c/avrant, where you can find trolls even now being mad about things we said 2 years ago. If you want to contact Rob directly, it is rob@avrant.com, @FirstReflect is his Twitter. I am Tom @avrant.com, @avrant_Tom. We have our producer, Austin, who has his Twitter handle is @Austin, TEN Pond, Austin Pond. He has his own podcast, the We Watch Movies podcast about. I'm sorry. It's the We Watch Movies. I say that already. The We Watch Movies podcast. I'm sorry. Yep. It's a podcast about Duke Nukem.
Okay.
And how seminal that game was, and how disappointed they were that it took so long for the new game to come out, and that how
forever.
Yeah, and how they're looking forward to the next installment.
Which so it is the franchise of Duke Nukem.
It is the entire thing. Yeah.
Sure, we watch movies. Why wouldn't it be?
Oddly enough, if they made a Duke Nukem movie, all of the people on the podcast have said that they would not watch it. So it could never live up to the mythos of the game. I don't know what to tell you. So they're a very strange lot.
Our other huge thank you to Liz for coming back onto the podcast. Thank you, Liz.
Yes, Liz. Thank you so much for coming back. It was great having you. And I know it was she's basically trying to time. She didn't say this on the podcast, but she told me she's timing like when the baby goes down so that she knows that this is solid sleep time for the baby, which means this is probably solid sleep time for her that she was giving up. So I do really appreciate her coming back. So thanks, Liz, for coming back. All right, for AV Rant, I'm Tom Andry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.